I've just started a poll, so if you're participating in tonight's vPub live in the lounge, that is the YouTube chat, answer the question I've asked there. What's your preference? Is your preference bourbon cask or is your preference sherry cask? Right, we're time in a practical sense going through 5 levels of different whiskey exploration from starter whiskies right through to cask strength. And we're going to pitch bourbon cask against sherry cask. We're going to talk about affordability, availability. We're going to talk about how they affect us, how we enjoy them, the differences in flavors, the differences in availability, choice, and selection as well. That's the theme for tonight. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And as always, I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to another Thursday night. I hope, as always, that you're sitting comfortably and you've got something decent in the glass. If you're picking this up on the replay, thank you also very, very much for doing so. It means a lot because so much of the comments, so much of the interaction, things like that are happening live here with the people that are in here in the chat in the lounge. But so much of you who take the time to leave a comment and things like that is really, really appreciated. I'll apologise for last week. Usually on a Friday or a Saturday, I kind of catch up with the comments and things post vPub, and I go in and I put in chapters and things to make it easy for you guys watching on the replay. But I'm delinquent last week. Occasionally I miss these things if I have busy weekends, but I'll endeavour to make some time tomorrow to catch up with tonight's vPub for you guys and last week's. Let's see how I got on. Anyway, for everyone that's participating live tonight, fantastic welcome, everyone. I hope you're sitting comfortably and I hope you've got something nice in the glass. I've got something nice in the glass. I've got almost a perma-shelf favourite, I would have to say, a whiskey that stayed a favourite of mine for as long as I can remember, honestly speaking. I've got multiple brands of this, multiple rebrands, multiple old brands, some of them going back as far as the 1970s even. It's a terrific wee whiskey, and you can probably guess what it is because it is probably the most obvious and most famous bourbon cask matured core range product that's available out there. But we'll get to that in a second. Welcome, everyone. Cheers. The way that tonight's going to work, after we experiment right at the start of the stream that you might be interested in, I've got 10 Glencairns in front of me tonight. So usually I only have 5. So I guess that means that I'm going to have to be careful and pour half as much into each of the Glencairns and keep the consumption down, of course. But like anything, whatever doesn't get sipped at the end of the night, it's the vPub, it's live. I don't need to drink it all. It can go on a wee spittoon. It can just get tossed. Just the way it is, especially on school nights, we always have to look after what we're consuming. I'm going to be going through 10 whiskies tonight just for the purpose of the topic, just to kind of give myself a prop and a prompt in order to discuss them with you. But it's nonsensical, right? It's just silly to consider that there's even, if we go on for 2 hours tonight, 3 hours tonight, beyond, that we could ever come to anything that is conclusive. But it might be conclusive for us as individuals. For now, over the course of my whiskey journey, I've been backwards and forwards, bourbon cask, sherry cask, experimentation, go round the houses, come back, bourbon cask, sherry cask, bourbon cask, sherry cask. To ask me what my favourite is, I would be able to answer. But on certain nights and certain moments in a certain mood, it could go absolutely either way. And it wouldn't just be a case of a couple of percent. The mood I'm in means that there is going to be one style that I prefer over the other. These are remarkably different styles of single malt Scotch whisky, to the point that when I was first sipping whisky, way back in the early days of when I was first getting my teeth into it, and the friends I was sharing it with, we had this sense of how can this be the same drink? We understood clearly the concept of peated and unpeated and everything in between. But the different styles that came from Cask, while we weren't fully aware of it at the time, that was the big contrast that we were tasting. And little did we know that what we were tasting was potentially bourbon cask versus sherry cask. In time, that becomes very clear to everyone, and maybe they fall down certain rabbit holes and things that they chase, and they end up stuck in a lane for a while. So it can be nice to contrast and to keep ourselves up to speed with what's available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through gateway whiskies. I'm going to go through integrity whiskies, comparing 2 of each, of course. I'm going to go through fan favourites. Then I'm going to go through some premium picks. So for that, we're looking at 18 years plus, what's available and affordable. And then I'm going to go finish off tonight on a kind of a whiskey botherers pick. So we're up at the cask strength, high ABV end of things. But we still want to keep the focus on the themes of the vPub, what's available, what's affordable, and what we're actually enjoying and celebrating right now. But before we get into all of that, we'll do what I always do and jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Welcome, everyone. Nice to have you. I've got the poll running in the background, so please put your preferences in there now. What's your preference? I guarantee you, no, I won't guarantee. I'm going to suggest that your preference might be a lot to do with where you are on your whiskey exploration journey. But that said, I'm looking for the orange. So if you're trying to get my attention, type Aquavite or at Aquavite. It should pop up in orange, and I've got a better chance of picking up your chat tonight. Thank you so much. Max Kreitner is saying, good evening, my friend. I can't answer in the poll because I don't have a preference. Force yourself in the mood that you're in tonight, Max. Just do it, just based on the mood that you're in this moment in time, and everyone the same. It really depends on the mood and other external factors. I don't doubt that for a second. And I think a lot of people land in that kind of, and it's not ambivalence, it's genuine appreciation for 2 very different styles. But we need to just mention that Scotch whisky doesn't exist in these 2 styles. Scotch whisky is mostly a vatting of both, actually. Most of the products, single malt Scotch whisky official releases that we enjoy out there, the vast majority of them will be a vatting of bourbon cask and sherry cask maturation in order to bring different layers, levels of depth of complexity, richness, brightness, fruitiness, whatever it may be, sweetness. But they are by far the most popular. Probably 90% of Scotch whisky is being matured in either first fill bourbon, second fill bourbon, third fill, or refill bourbon casks. And then about maybe 7, 8, 9%, I don't know how much, is going to be sherry cask, mostly refill sherry cask. We tend to get 100 years out of a decent quality sherry cask, maybe more. And then the rest is made up of everything else, all the crazy selection of casks that we have these days. Sherry cask can be multiple varieties of sherry, of course, but outside of that, we've got cognac casks, we've got Tokai casks, we've got red wine casks and white wine casks, and we've got Calvados, and it's endless. There are legislations in place. We can't have stone fruit, for example. But generally speaking, as long as it's oak, and there is some link to tradition, apparently. I'm not so sure about tequila on that front, but it can be used to mature Scotch whisky. However, the vast majority is ex-bourbon and ex-sherry. And that's what we'll be focused on tonight. And we'll be playing the 2 off against each other in the various tiers and price brackets that we've got. Anyway, Max, good to have you in, buddy. And while you're here, congratulations to Max Jr. I'll raise a wee glass for him. Cheers to the Kreitners. Cheers. Jenny Miller is saying, good evening, Roy. Hello, Barflies. Helen, Andy, and I are having Wi-Fi issues here on Isla. We'll catch the replay tomorrow. Or you show-offs. We're having difficulty with the Wi-Fi. That's code speak on Isla for we're just having too much fun. Sorry I couldn't keep in touch while I was on the island of Isla. You know, the signal's really patchy, the connection's poor, the Wi-Fi's terrible. Listen, have a ball, guys. I'm a wee bit jealous. Danny Hebbington is saying, evening, Roy, evening, Barflies. Starting tonight with Loch Lomond's new 16-year-old Waypoint. Fantastic Danny, cognac cask, I believe. It just opened, but very nice so far. That's just out the wrapper, Danny. You must have picked that up or got it delivered very, very quickly. P-Dram is saying, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Aquavite. Glad to be able to pick this up live after a long time, P-Dram. It's wonderful to have you in here. Doesn't matter how long it's been since you last come in. I see the name and I remember it like it was last week. Great to have you, buddy. I hope you're doing well. Good evening, Aquavites, Alistair Gray. Good evening, Barflies. Northern Lights are putting on a right show for us here this evening. It's been clear, clear skies down here. I wonder if there are any outside. Maybe after the vPub tonight, I'll put a jacket on because it's pretty cold now and nip outside for a wee peek. Gino is here from Canada saying, evening, Roy. Nice to be back home after living out of a suitcase for 2 weeks. But what a great 2 weeks meeting Barflies and yourself, buddy. Gino, fantastic to have you. I hope you and Kathleen are rested. I hope your pal Graham is back on the mend after his dodgy leg issues, and Claudette and everyone is all over their jet lag. It was fantastic to see you here. More important than anything, to see you content and happy. Bruce Bernard is here. Good to see you, Bruce. No drama in a glass. Rice bubbles in the bowl this morning. Okay, rice bubbles. I think, Bruce, we would be calling that Rice Krispies. But, buddy, it's wonderful to welcome you into the vPub over a course of Rice Krispies or rice bubbles. Cheers. Bruno Martins in Portugal saying, good evening, Roy Aquavite. To be on theme, I've poured a Loch Lomond Cask 736. First fill ex-bourbon and an Altmore 17-year-old signatory 100 proof. First fill Oloroso. Cheers. You're having that nice to and fro, Bruno. You are on theme tonight. I hope you're enjoying it. ABV's pretty fantastic as well. The 736 is 53.1 from memory. And the Altmore 17, of course, 57.1. Quite a nice wee contrast backwards and forwards. I might force you to pick a favourite before the end of the night. Only kidding, Bruno. Please enjoy it, buddy. Nice to have you in from Portugal. Peter is saying, even Roy, sherry cask for others all the way. I'll do with bourbon cask, says Frank. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the poll turns out. Anybody that's in here tonight in the lounge, in the YouTube chat, that is, pop in and put your preference in. We've got bourbon cask facing off against sherry cask for all the barflies that are going to be hanging out with us tonight. Stick your preferences in. Scott Allen is saying, jumped, Scotty. Sorry, buddy. I'll need to scroll back up and hope I can catch that. I was quite a wee bit behind. Oh, Scott, I'm so sorry. Still scrolling up. Scott, I'm so sorry, my friend. David Hong has bought me a dram. Scott, hopefully I'll catch a comment from you soon. Usually I'm able to scroll up and catch it, but I'm struggling with that one. David Hong has bought me a dram, no comment or anything, but he's bought me a generous dram and celebrating being a member of the Barflies. David, so wonderful to have you in, buddy. In Whisky Lover Society, Gert. I think it's Gert. I feel like it's Gert. Sherry Monsters is his preference. David Hong, thank you very much for your dram. And Whisky Lover Society, doing his own thing out there on YouTube, by the way. You can find his YouTube channel by clicking on his name in the chat, or just search for Whisky Lover Society. Thank you both for your generous drams. Nice to have you. Come on, Scott Allen, we really need that. Really need that. I missed it. Whiskey is a Journey saying, what a coincidence. I'm drinking Longrow Red 7 Pinot Noir casks and Longrow Standard Release. Cheers. So the Standard Release will be a vatting. Longrow peated, that is, if it is. And obviously the Pinot Noir, you're talking wine cask maturation there. But I hope they're both going down really well. You're obviously having a bit of a peaty night tonight. Good stuff. And Aaron Rao has bought me a very generous dram. Aaron, so good to have you in. He's saying, looking forward to travelling from San Francisco for the Glasgow Whisky Festival. Listen, I'll put out a wee shout out. Last week I mentioned the function that we're having on the Friday, and that's the one that is pretty much locked in now. It's we've got it locked down. I don't have it written down in front of me, so let's see if I can remember who's hosting us. So on the Friday afternoon from 3:30 to 6:30, tickets will go on sale to patrons first from tomorrow, I hope. So we'll just go through the tiers. We'll go through evangelists, disciples, ambassadors on Patreon, and then we'll go out to the Barflies group on Facebook, and then just general public release. We've got 60 places, so there should be space on the Friday to fit a lot of folk in, hopefully as you're gathering in Glasgow for the festival weekend. The Piper Bar on George Square in Glasgow has got a lovely whiskey lounge upstairs, and we've rented that out. And we've got people hosting us from Loch Lomond, from Ardnamurchan, from White Peak, from Decadent Drinks, from Glencadam, from Springbank. All of them are locked in now. All of them are going to be bringing along something special, something that would be only considered in the old days of festivals, maybe not modern times of festivals. Back in the day, they maybe kept the special drams under the table. These were the under the table pours. It happens less and less now. So we're having a tasting with kind of a nod to that theme. So we're just going to fill the upstairs of the Piper Bar with barflies. The ticket price, it's going to be a very, very reasonable price given the whiskies that we're able to share. We're only covering the costs of the room and the corkage and things like that. So look out for that. Patrons get first access tomorrow. Aaron, I hope you're looking forward to it all. On the Saturday, you've all taken care of your tickets for the festival, of course. Like Aaron, you've got a ticket in hand or whatever. I've been able to help out a few people with tickets. I am now at the point where I know of only one other ticket that's free right now. But that said, if you are looking for a ticket, get involved in the Barflies group, get on the Glasgow Whisky Festival website. And if you're a patron of mine, you can reach out to me and see if there's anything I can do to add you to the wee list that's now cancelled out. And I'll try and help you there. But after the festival, we lay on barfly buses. And those barfly buses are for the purpose of taking us who are going to eat together, who are going to enjoy an Indian curry together in town. We all get a run from the festival into the centre of Glasgow, drops us at the restaurant, and we eat together. And then we go round for a final dram, Joch and Doris, a nightcap, whatever you want to call it, round at the Bon Accord. And then about an hour or so, 2 hours after that, all the VIPs come in from the second session and they go up and they relax after working all day and putting in a right old shift. And we start to peel off because on the Sunday, there's another Patreon event that I host. So we all try and keep ourselves in good shape. So tomorrow, Patreon for the tickets for the Friday event. For the bus and dinner, that'll be a ticketed event. Obviously, there's only so many seats on a bus. There's only so many seats at the restaurant. That'll be ticketed as well, and that'll be Craig, who always looks after that event for us. It's Craig's family. He's very trusted, and he does a good job for us. That'll be in the Barflies page on Facebook. If you don't have access to Facebook, just message me or email me directly, and I will try and make sure that you're added to the list for the bus transfer and the dinner at Glasgow at Saturday night. I'm really looking forward to it. There's nothing more fortifying for everything that we do than getting together and gathering and reminding everyone how just good it is to be like-minded folk together. David Brody is here. I think HB, Andy and Jerry are yanking your chain. I've got Wi-Fi signal in Isla, says Dave Brody from Bunnahaven. So that's too funny. Like I said, David, you know it's code speak, right? Oh, we couldn't get in touch. Last time I was in Isla, I had 4G everywhere I went almost, right? But sometimes it's nice to be disconnected. So it's okay. We'll forgive them, buddy. Hope you're keeping well. Whiskey Weekend Dram Harrow is saying, say new camera or more focus. No, I spent a bit of time. So I changed the lights a little bit a couple of weeks ago. I had a problem, but I spent a bit of time with manual settings. So we're on full manual right now. And I found a way that I hope, I mean, it's no use if there's going to be two people here, I think. I don't know if that would work as well. But I found a way that hopefully it'll stay focused on me, fingers crossed. And also if I hold up a bottle, we should be able to focus on the bottle. Let's see. And if it does, it's working. So we're doing okay. We're in good shape. Thanks for noticing, Harrow. Ear Whiskey, you look better than ever. Slanchi and Ardnamurchan single bourbon casks. Ear Whiskey. Now, this is Denmark. I used to know a fella who changed his channel name to Ear Whiskey. Matt? I want to say Matt. Wonder if that's you, fella. Anyway, Ear Whiskey, thank you for your dram. Thank you for the compliment. It's nice to welcome you here. Looks good, the bottle, and also you, says Harrow. Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. Good stuff. I've been looking for Jimmy Legg. I know he's in because I saw his wee logo, but I just want to make sure he's home and he's safe and he's feeling okay and he's in good health and over all his jet lag. I should have mentioned they were in my care today, says Dave Brody. I had a wee suspicion. There is no better care on that Hebridean Island than to be in the care of Mr. Brodie. It's a good thing to seek. If you're fortunate enough to do it, dare I say, he is maybe the new Ian MacArthur. Is that pushing it a bit far? Very different style, but great fun. I hope that you did look after them, and I have no doubt that they had a lot of fun. Cheers, fella. All right, so you saw what bottle I held up there. That's going to be my first pick. So let's see how this let's see how this poll actually, before I get into the pouring, is going to go throughout tonight. If I pick this now, oh wow, it's very close. We have 54% to 46% in favour of bourbon cask right now. Now, when we first put this poll up in the first minute or two that it was up, that was above 60% in favour of bourbon cask. So as we talk through tonight, and as your mood changes throughout tonight based on what you're sipping, well, I don't know. For those of you who have voted, it's probably going to be impossible to change your mind. So what I'll do is at some point, I'll kill this poll and then refresh it and do another identical poll and see if we've changed their mind based on the dynamic of the people that are in. But you can see it's 55-45 now, so it's leaning a wee bit more towards the bourbon fans, the bourbon cask maturation fans. So the takeaway from that is instantly we see both are super successful at maturing Scotch whisky. Both are very, very well received. And that's interesting to me because while sherry cask has a long tradition, bourbon casks is a much more modern concept to mature Scotch whisky, certainly post-war, and certainly in the last 50 years it's become much more popular, and that's down to just pure availability of the casks and the demand for Scotch whisky, and some other factors as well involving the way that sherry is distributed and things like that. However, serendipity plays a huge part in whisky's enjoyment, I think. And I think one of the most serendipitous things to have happened to Scotch whisky is the availability of bourbon casks, especially when they've been used once or twice, maybe sometimes a wee bit more, and then filled and left alone for a long time. Listen, this is rare whisky I'm speaking about now. And even if it's been in a refill cask and left alone for a long time, it's going to be an expensive product. So I have to understand it. I have to caveat that when I talk about these experiences with these whiskies, these are rare experiences that not everyone can have all of the time, because the ability to afford long matured whiskey, whichever kind of wood it's come from, is becoming more and more difficult. It's a shame. However, today, you can walk into any specialist, go into any online store. You can even go into your local supermarket and have a choice between a bourbon cask pick and a sherry cask pick. So let's get started. Greg in Paris is saying, see, Aquaviti, the solution for me is often not always the careful mix of the two cask types, especially for small batches. I don't disagree. I really don't disagree, Greg. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. So many good balanced products out there that's a vatting of both. But for the most part tonight, even if I haven't managed to make it completely exclusively matured in the casks that I'm speaking about, it's the style and profile that I'm speaking about. Let's get to that. Let's start off a wee bit off-piste. I've got my 10-year-old Glenmorangie in the glass right now. Any of you that's been following me for long enough will know how I feel about Glenmorangie 10. It's a 40% product. You can pick it up everywhere. It's ubiquitous. But out of all the ubiquitous supermarket whiskies, Glenmorangie's 10-year-old always to me feels like maybe the most pure, the most true, the less footered with. Footered is a Scottish word. What by that I mean it's a bit less tinkered with. It's a bit less engineered. I believe Glenmorangie 10 to be natural colour. It doesn't say anywhere on the packaging, and it never has as far as I'm aware. But I've always believed it to be true to its natural colour. It's got that beautiful pale gold glint to it with that kind of bright yellow highlight. I've always enjoyed this whiskey, and for me, it is always reminiscent of pineapple cubes. There's light citrus in here. There's bright, sweet apple and things like that. But I always look for, and I'm always rewarded with that confectionery shop of it's a sweet, a candy that we have. It's a perfect cube. It can be difficult when you first start to enjoy it because there's jagged corners on it, covered in sugar, pineapple flavour. But you've got this pineapple confectionery note. And tonight, it's actually a wee bit brighter, so I would even say it's a wee bit like maybe tinned pineapple juice. Maybe even sweet and pineapple and syrup. You get the theme. Glenmorangie for me, pineapple. I've loved it. It's been on the vPub very recently. It was part of the top 10, you'll remember. And it's featured throughout the history of the channel in lots and lots of different branding. So I had this teed up, and when I'm going to start this off, there is no other bourbon matured product out there that I want to feature than this one, especially when I'm in this category right now, where we're talking about supermarket whiskies. But let's not call them supermarket whiskies. It's supermarket whiskies for us in the UK and Europe potentially. But for the global, for people out there in North America and further beyond, maybe you can't buy whiskey in supermarkets. So the term supermarket whiskey is a bit odd. But for us, this is a ubiquitous gateway whiskey. And this is always going to be my pick for a bourbon example. There are others out there, by the way, that Loch Lomond's got their original. There's other Loch Lomond's as well that will be exclusively bourbon. But for me, it's not just about what we can buy in 2024. It's about 40 years of what Glenmorangie has been bringing through as what they call the original. It's been such a remarkably consistent product to the point there's an article on Dramface that compares 3 to 4 different Glenmorangies over the decades. And I think the takeaway, sorry for the spoiler, is that it's remarkable how consistent that product has been in the wildly changing landscape of whiskey over those decades. It's called Glenmorangie There and Now. And what it compares is different branding, different bottle shapes, different labeling of Glenmorangie's The Original. What I'm going to do tonight, and the reason I delayed this from before summer, this was a topic that was originally teed up before summer, is that Glenmorangie just before summer announced that they were going to bring out a new version of The Original. But it wasn't a cynical rebrand. It wasn't the removal of an age statement. No. Glenmorangie have got previous on this. It was the upping of the age statement. Now, before I went on holiday, this hadn't hit the market yet. It wasn't in the places where I would be shopping. I hadn't seen it anywhere. So I just kind of bumped in and said, that'll be a topic that I can do when I get my hands on the 12-year-old. Well, eventually I managed to get it just this week. And we've got Glenmorangie's The Original as a 12-year-old. It is, in every metric you can use to measure, identical to the 10-year-old. There is no change, except for 2 things. Clearly the age statement and the white band there at the front. But also, and I hope you can see this, it is also quite a nudge darker. Now, I've always suspected that Glenmorangie's Original is natural colour. Although it doesn't say on the label, I've always felt that that's the case. I suspect that this is potentially another scenario that may back us up, our suspicion that it's naturally coloured. You could be a bit cynical and say, oh, it's a 12-year-old now. They're going to make sure it's a wee bit darker and add a dot of colour. You could be right, but I don't think so. I think there's an aversion to that practice within Glenmorangie generally. I don't think they do that at all. However, what harm could it do for them to tell us that they don't add colour on the bottle where it matters? Okay. Clearly what I'm going to do, since I've been enjoying this while we set up, been enjoying my little Glenmorangie 10, I'm going to get the 12-year-old cracked open. It's a wee bit more expensive. And the wee tab, oh, no, maybe I can get to it. Yeah, we're in. It's a wee bit more expensive. When I first spotted it, I think it came out at £42, which is quite a bit more than the 32 that I spent on the, I don't remember, somewhere around £32 on the 10-year-old. But let's get into it. Round shoulders, will it glug? The tiniest glug. And just a tiny pour as well. Neck pour, not being entirely fair for this comparison, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be able to get a bit of a kind of gut reaction to how the two whiskies play out. I fully suspect that RRP, it already has dropped. I paid £38 for this one this week. And I fully suspect that RRP will drop and it'll go on discount like Glenmorangie tends to do, whether it's in your supermarket, your online retailer, your local retailer, whatever it may be, you'll be able to pick it up a wee bit cheaper from time to time. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, so all the other specs are absolutely identical. Both are 40% ABV. We just have an older age statement and a slightly darker color. That's all we have. And I have to caveat, like I always do, this is a neck pour, and this one's been open for quite a wee while now. There's a much bolder nose on the 12. Is it cask? So this is kind of sweet apple, more brighter, lighter, very light honey. And this just kind of, there's a weight, suddenly a heavy richness. That's remarkable. That's probably the biggest departure I've ever witnessed between one Glenmorangie original and the other. Okay, if you go from a 2024 to back in a 1980s expression or something, you will get a difference, of course. But as the step changes go, this is quite a big change. The pineapple thing is still here, that kind of stone fruit, the white fruit. But it's kind of a more syrupy, butterscotch, dare I say, texture. Vanillas. So these notes that I'm talking about clearly are likely to be cask notes. Only 2 years. Anybody that enjoyed my Cask 735 from 2022 release, the Aqua Vitae Loch Lomond bottling, to Cask 736, which was this year's bottling, knows just how much a difference 2 years can make. Cheers, everyone. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's quite a marked difference. Really a surprise. Really, really a surprise. I would even go, this is odd. I would even suggest that, by the way, it might be that there isn't maybe a clear favourite, depending on the mood, but I'm drawn to the 12-year-old because not only is there a kind of more depth, more dimension, more richness, it feels like, to the flavour, there's also a kind of nice, slightly thicker texture, to the point that it's kind of making me glance at this bottle to say, are you sure this is 40%? But it is 40%. It is, there's a bit more weight to it. When you go back to the original, the 10-year-old, it's the sweet apple and the brightness and the orchard and light honey that kind of takes over. Whereas this is kind of, the honey is replaced by a thicker syrup, like a butterscotch, a caramel. And dark, sweeter orange, richer citrus. Okay, I'm sold. Fantastic. I mean, I was already hoping that I could be positive about this because it's hopefully going to be a positive change. Hopefully we can still pick it up at the same price point we did previously when Glenmorangie did that with the Quinta Ruban. Eventually the price settled. You can still pick up Glenmorangie's Quinta Ruban today in the 50s, 50 odd pounds. That's an encouraging step. So while we can have a go at the folks behind Glenmorangie, the practice, the silliness that comes out of Ardbeg, for example, this is a positive step and credit where credit's due and something to celebrate. That Glenmorangie's always been kind of one of my favourite ubiquitous whiskies. The honesty of it, the integrity of it, despite the fact it's presented at 40%, okay, it's a mass market whiskey, has always, and back in the day when everyone was losing their age statements on the shelves, do you remember that? The late 2000s, the early 2010s, when all the age statements were disappearing. For those who've been drinking whiskey for long enough, it was happening regularly. You go to your supermarket and pick up something that looks very, very similar to the thing you bought the week before, the month before, whenever it was, but suddenly it's lost its age statement, but the price is the same. Glenmorangie never did that. The original always came with a 10-year-old age statement. Now we have to compare it to a sherry counterpart. And let me tell you, when it comes to gateway whiskies that we're going to go in and pay a reasonable amount of money for, I don't want to use the word cheap, go into our supermarket and pick up a bargain whiskey that is sherry cask, that's much more difficult. It's much more difficult. There is a clear whiskey that in 4 out of the 5 categories I'm going to talk to you about tonight, there is a whiskey that is eligible for every single one of the first 4 categories. And I can't mention it to you. Why? Because it's currently in consideration for the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. I know I'm not going to affect the outcome of those awards, but I just don't want it to be a discussion point. So while the vote is live, I tend to back off and not talk about things that are nominated as much as possible. So I have deliberately left out a glaring omission tonight, at least one, maybe 2. And it's just because they're in the running in the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, I hope you understand, which meant I had to get creative for a couple of these lineups, but I managed it. I've got another supermarket whiskey, one that doesn't get a lot of airtime on the vPub, but it's getting some airtime tonight. And it is Glenmurray's Elgin Classic. But specifically, this is the sherry cask finish version. Now we have to just talk about here, sherry cask maturation is very different from a sherry cask finish. While they might achieve the majority of, a proportion of, or some of the same flavours and characteristics, we have to make a distinction there between something that is fully matured in sherry casks and something that has spent its life maturing in bourbon or refill casks, and then spending a period of months or years in finishing casks. That's what we have here with this here. It's a non-age statement, Speyside from Glenmurray, Elgin Classic, sherry cask finish. I paid £28 for this, but I have seen this on sale for less than that. I think the retail on it would typically be about £30 to £34. But as I say, I managed to pick this up for 28, and it seemed to me to be a good representation of something that can compete in the supermarket on a similar price point with Glenmorangie's 10, Glenmorangie from the Bourbon cask. And this featuring, hopefully, some sherry cask flavour. Glug. Okay, he gets a point for the glug straight away. So, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it to be that obvious and that bold. Immediately, we've just got this big hit of plum jam. There's a wee bit of a... We'll get to that. We've got a big hit of jam and dark fruit. soft spice, cinnamon and ginger, yada, 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 right? For those that have been around whiskey for long enough, we start to run out of adjectives for when things are very obviously sherry cask. We need to spend a wee bit more time to try and stretch out the adjectives and descriptors to articulate what we're getting in the glass. Christmas cake, all of those types of things. When we talk about fruit, we move away from the orchard fruit and citrus fruit, and we tend to talk about darker fruits or dried fruits. This is like jam. Plum jam, damson jam, dark jam. Soft though, it's very soft. But there's not a lot of kind of the sweet notes that you would expect from the amount of time it's spent in bourbon. The sherry is definitely leaning, and I would say it's got a lot to do with me sipping it on the back of, or nosing it on the back of the Glenmorangie. So a wee sip before I jump back into the lounge. First thing I notice is texture. This arrives and feels a little bit thinner in texture, which is okay. It's 40% whiskey. Glenmorangie seems to manage to somehow still manage to bring a bit of body, a bit of shape, a bit of oiliness to it. This is a wee bit thinner. There's something on the nose that is a little bit like, and I don't want to say sulfur because it's not. Some of you that are super sensitive to sulfur might be drawn to those kind of things, but it's not like that. But it is a wee bit, and I first nosed it a wee bit earlier. It's a wee bit like spent birthday cake candles or something. Not smoke. Not smoke, but I think you know what I mean. Like the air after a fireworks display, or a struck match, but not as it's, you know, it's after the event, that kind of thing. Oh wow, actually struck match is great. So even just like a matchbox that's got a mix of fresh matches and struck matches in the box, that kind of vibe, that kind of aura. I'm not sensitive to sulfury notes, but some people are, and it's something that we have to deal with sherry casks, unfortunately. Apples, lots of apple on the palate. So some similarities there. Let's say a tidy whiskey, a neat whiskey, a good wee performer for £28. Says on the label sherry cask finish. There's no age statement. They're doing nothing to try and deceive us. I don't know what the situation is with colouring. I would hope that if they're putting colouring in that and they're finishing it in a sherry cask, that they're really not adding much colour. It looks a wee bit darker on camera tonight, I think. But here it's quite, if I hold it up against the Glenmorangie, you'll see that it's maybe just 1 or 2 steps darker, not much more. So if they are putting colour in this, it's a tiny dot. I would suspect not so much. All in all, if you've got someone who's on a budget, if you've got someone that wants to taste the contrasts and flavours in Scotch whisky, this is a good wee thing to have, because I struggled to find one in this price bracket, in this mass market kind of supermarket gateway whisky entry level point that clearly celebrated the facts that it was sherry cask. Tom Bollinger is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 7 months. Only got a port cask with me, so that's in my glass. Anything does when you're here, Tom. Anything that you're enjoying, fantastic. Thank you for your support as being a member of the Barflies. That's Tom has clicked the join button underneath the video tonight on YouTube, and it keeps all the content on the Aquavitae channel completely ad-free and gives you access to channel-themed emoji and things to colour up the chat, either the live chat or the afterwards. Stevie O, good to see you, Stevie. He's bought me a dram, a generous dram. He's saying, great to be amongst whiskey friends this evening. Stevie, you are amongst whiskey friends. I hope you're keeping well, my friend. I hope your health is getting a wee bit better. And I'm very, very happy to have you hanging out with us in here. Wonderful to have you, Stevie O. And Jonathan Flowers, my pal Jonathan, good to see you in here, my friend from Alabama, if my memory serves me well. I have to grab one with the extra 3% for the US. He's just in here to flex, just in here to show off that the export market tends to get 3% extra ABV. Fair play to you, big guy. It's nice to see you in. Sherry casks are involved compared to modern casks, is saying Antonio D. How have they evolved? These days, the majority of sherry casks that's being bought to fill with newer, more modern whiskey is bought to specification. There are exceptions. You do occasionally get Bodega casks, but they're very rare. And they are seasoned. So they season what type of wine is going to be used to season the wood. They specify whether it's going to be kiln dried or air dried. They specify whether it's going to be European oak or American oak. All of these things, what size it's going to be, is a barrel, a hogshead, a butt. All of these things, it's done to order these days. And it has to be that way because of the scale of modern whiskey demands and production. Spain does not export bulk sherry anymore. Not for almost 40 years now, 35 years. So that's not an option anymore. So it has to be that way. It's very rare for Solera systems, for bodegas to be taken apart in order for people to access wood that's been used in a bodega for years and years and years. And if they have, there's going to be very little wood activity in those casks. It's all going to be about the previous fillings, the previous incumbent, the previous liquid. It's very different from something that's only been filled as a seasoning or lightly filled, where you're going to get much more wood characteristics through. And arguably, that's something that is much more desirable for the Scotch whisky industry and maturing Scotch whisky. First fill sherry casks can be really quite bold. You have to be very careful. For you to see something in first fill sherry into double-digit years is very rare. Some of these casks can be super, super active. So what tends to happen is that they are a few years and then they become refill, and then as time goes on, it can be used for longer and longer and longer maturations. Speaking very broadly here as a rule of thumb. But thank you all for your drams. Thank you very much, Stevie. Thank you, Antonio. And thank you, Tom and Jonathan, for supporting me as being a member of the Barflies. Max Kreitner in Austria has just gifted 10 Aquavitae Barfly memberships. So 10 of you lucky random folk out there are going to get a wee membership. Thanks to Max and thanks to you all. What the Glenelgan does is serve to freshen up, even brighten that Glenmorangie 12 even more. A wee bit of a kind of mulchy note in the Glenelgan as well. Want to spend a wee bit more time with. So both of those are neck pours. Both those are things that I've just opened tonight. First fill sherry is whiskey profanity. Yes, here. Jimmy Legg is here. So good to see you, buddy. Hope you're keeping well. Good to have you in. And I understand that it's not your gig. I have got some first fill sherries on the shelf that are spectacular. Dave the Brave, good to see you, Dave. He's saying comparing Kilkerran 8-year-old bourbon versus Kilkerran 8-year-old sherry tonight. That's superb. Both cast strength. I prefer bourbon normally, but the sherry is holding up good. That's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I'm glad you're enjoying both of those. If I had two on the shelf that I was going to just buy one of them, Dave, I would reach for the bourbon. But I know the two that you're talking about, and I suspect that I could be bullied into having either, or preferably both. Doodle the Dram Arnie is saying, enjoying this theme tonight, double yielding Balkan, straight from the Cask Oloroso in one hand and first fill bourbon in the other. Heaps of fun. I'm surprised the smoke alarm above me hasn't gone off yet. P.T. Edward, straight from the Cask, sherry cask, bourbon, and amazing experimentation. There's only one P.T. I think there's only one P.T. whiskey in the lineup tonight. I was deliberately trying to avoid P.T. whiskey, and then I was suckered into one. I just had to. And I'll get to that a wee bit later on, but let's move quickly on to the next layer. Let's level it up. We've gone past our kind of 40%, easily affordable, ubiquitous and available everywhere, entry-level whiskies, and we want to level it up. We've become a wee bit aware of things like how chill filtration potentially affects whiskey, malt spirit. We've become a wee bit more aware of colouring and these types of things. We've certainly become a wee bit more aware of full-term maturation versus finishing. So we're kind of going to want to step things up a wee bit towards something a wee bit more enthusiast leaning. But we still want to keep the prices in check. So we still want to make this something that's available to everyone. It's difficult because we're talking about regions here. I know I always have to caveat the vPub content with that. You guys in North America, brought to light recently by the Dramface Colonials podcast, they're highlighting just how difficult it can be to get a hold of some of these whiskies. I hear you out there where you are. I hope that the awareness that the vPub and the content and the Dramface content brings to you when we talk about things that's not available in your area means that when you do travel or when you do happen across things, you know what it's about and you can spot it immediately. Anyway, we're talking about things that are maybe still gateway. You could maybe consider them. I've put a question mark here. Gateway whiskies, but they might take a wee bit more effort to seek them out. So bourbon cask versus sherry cask. At this level, I'm going to go for the ubiquitous, the delicious, the difficult to overstate how good a thing this is. Even although it's £10 cheaper than it was pre-pandemic, let's be honest, but it's probably a fair price now when it was maybe arguably undersold a wee bit, certainly under the radar. There's no way Glencadam's 10-year-old is under the radar today. Disappointed to not see this in this year's online Scotch Whisky Awards because it could arguably be in with a shout this year. People understand just how delicious, how pure, how flavourful, how wonderful Glencadam's wee 10-year-old is. A lot of first fill bourbon in this, I would suspect, by the flavour profile. Mixed and vatted, sorry, with some refill bourbon too. Let's get it in the glass and let's put it up against a sherry cask equivalent. Now, we've got full-term maturation in bourbon cask, first fill and refill. We've got 46% ABV. We've got a fully transparent product that we know is unchill filtered because it tells us on the label. They certainly have not added any colour to this beautifully, lightly coloured, delicate spirit. So flavourful. So how do we find something that's the alternative of that, but from a sherry cask? We're looking for natural presentation. We're looking for non-chill filtration, natural colour. We're looking for full-term maturation, whatever the age may be, full-term maturation, sherry cask. But we still need to keep the price in mind. This is £42 for the Glencadam. How close can we get to that? Single malt whiskey. Come on. Let's see if any of you can come up with something. I've got a bottle here. It's appeared on the vPub before. It's not going to be a surprise to anyone, but give me your suggestions. Give me your suggestions. I'm looking for full-term maturation in sherry. I'm looking for it to be in the neighbourhood of 50 quid. I want it to be natural, and I want it stated on the label that it's natural. And I even want, come on, since it's Christmas, I don't know, I'm even looking for an age statement. What have we got? What exists out there? And I bring the first problem that we have with sherry casks. Sherry casks are expensive. A bourbon cask can be anywhere from 60, 70 to £120, depending on the specification and the provenance and things like that. The quality of the cask. Sherry casks can be anywhere from £500 to £1,200. Much, much, much more expensive. But I put it to you that a sherry cask can hold 500 plus litres, at least double what a bourbon cask can hold. Sometimes it might take a wee bit longer for that maturation to kick in, depending on whether it's first fill, refill, that type of things. When everything plays out over the course of manufacturing, producing the whiskey, putting it, filling it in a cask and leaving it to mature, the actual cask is a significant impact on the cost of the mature whiskey, but I'm going to put it to you and the industry and anybody that's in the industry listening out there right now that it is as much to do with the rarity as it is to do with the actual cost of production. And often the reason for the extra price is less to do with the cost of that liquid sitting in the warehouse and much more to do with how little of it there is compared to the bourbon cask equivalent. For discussion, Ryan Sutherland is saying 7 Sons. He's in here plugging his own product. Love it, Ryan. You're welcome here to do it anytime. 7 Sons 12-year-old blended malt at 48 quid, 46.7%, second fill, sherry maturation. I'm in, Ryan. I'm in. Good shout. 7 Sons blended malt. Let's see, where can I purchase such a thing? That's the 8-year-old. You're looking at 12-year-old that I'm after. I see it at Inverurie Whiskey Shop. I'll do a wee bit of shopping later, Ryan. For 48 quid, full term. I know that you're saying that it's second fill, refill sherry, but that is a pretty good price for such a thing. And it would have been a good one to slot in a couple of categories that I'm going to bring to you tonight. It's nice to see you have that confidence in the product as well. I'll give it a wee look, buddy. David Owen is saying, good evening, Roy. What about Buna 12? Yes, I absolutely hear you on Buna 12, 46.3% ABV, 12-year age statement, very sherry forward, very sherry leaning, and absolutely could be in the running because Bunnahabhain doesn't feature in this year's online Scotch Whisky Awards. The Bunnahabhain 12 has featured in the past. However, like so many mass market products out there, they are very light on the information of what goes into producing the product, and that's fine. Bunnahabhain 12 is leaning towards the enthusiast. It's got natural presentation, but it is a mass market product, and the variation from one batch to the next is going to change quite a bit, and that can become very complex when it comes to generating labels and tracking these things. They're just trying to make a consistent product. Malt whiskey doesn't want to be consistent, of course, but that's what they're trying to do. Bunnahabhain 12 would have been a fantastic wee product to put in the lineup tonight, and it's a good shout. Tom's Drams is saying Glencadam Oloroso cask. Lovely dram, absolutely. There's a couple of options there. We've got Oloroso, we've got the non-age statement as well. The what did they call it? The Andalucia, is that what they're calling it? Something. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten the pale blue label. Non-age statement sherry cask. There's a reason that I didn't pick Glencadam for the sherry cask pick tonight. Glencadam's going to get a lot of airtime tonight. Don't worry about it, Tom, but it's another good suggestion, and it's affordable. However, with Glencadam, it's not full-term maturation on the one I mentioned. Perhaps the Oloroso cask that you mentioned maybe is, Tom. Maybe that's a full-term maturation. Alistair McPhail is saying, evening all. Sorry I'm late. No such thing as being late to the vPub, buddy. It's always good to welcome you whenever you get here. And MJ Rodden is saying, a great topic, Roy. It's purely seasonality thing for me, which in itself is a huge mood dictator. Absolutely, MJ. So it ends up ex-bourbons are for summer and ex-sherry for winter. Spring, autumn is a toss-up. I'm right there with you. It just makes sense. It's not just about mood. You know, it's about environment, and it's about the temperature, and it's about how we're feeling, and how it's absolutely makes sense. Tonight I'm going for both. However, I have to admit that I'm able to enjoy a bourbon cask matured whiskey right throughout the year. So we've got our Glencadam in the glass. What more can I say? Remember that hero whiskey? This is the whole idea that I was going to come out with a series called Hero Whiskies. It didn't last, of course. It's been on the vPub. It's been explained. Was this £29 I was paying for it back then? Incredible. So vibrant, so detailed, so delicious, so worthy of your time. Glencadam's 10 is a stellar little, elegant, fruity, ever so slightly effervescent, certainly vibrant and detailed whiskey. It's just a delight, a wee delight. So I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to frustrate some of you, because a lot of you will not be able to get your hands on this because of distribution. It's still a nascent distillery. It's still brand new, still finding its feet. They released their product a wee bit too early, let's be honest, but they're catching up and they've caught up fast right now. Every time I've poured this, I've been surprised, and I'm hoping that I can be surprised with pouring it for you tonight. It's a local distillery to me. This is Glasgow-based Clydeside Distillery. This blue label product is their sherry cask. This is their Napier. Napier recalls a gentleman very much intrinsically part of the history of Clydeside. Clydeside is a region in shipbuilding and everything to do with the river I'm talking about, and the whiskey in the distillery acknowledges that with this release. Let me just read this. No age statement on this, no big obvious age on the front, but let's read the small print that they put on the label. This Clydeside single malt is produced using water from Loch Katrine, 100% Scottish barley, and then matured for over 6 years in Oloroso sherry casks. So this is 100% maturation in sherry, and there's an age statement. We've got that. The water source is a nice thing to know as well, I suppose. But if it's Loch Katrine and we live in Glasgow, that's what we call council juice or council juice locally. That's the water that pours from our tap. It's good water. Enticing, wild strawberry on the nose with hints of passion fruit and yada yada. So it takes us through tasting notes, which you don't need, but then it talks about 46% ABV, natural colour, and non-chill filtered. Distilled and bottled by Morrison Glasgow Distillers. Now, fully matured in ex-Oloroso sherry for 6 years, £54. It's not going to glug because the level is low. I hope you can see just how lovely a colour that is. See in the bottle as well. It's quite a big label on it, so it's hard to see through. We've got the obviously the shipping nod to the water level. I can't remember the name of this. Plimsoll line? No, it's Plimsoll line, isn't it? But we can see it on the side. But you can see that that's quite a lovely colour. Now, because they tell us that it's natural colour on the label, we can actually celebrate this dark whiskey. If they don't tell us on the label that it's natural colour, what's the point in us saying how lovely the colour is when it's designed and they've added a big dollop of mahogany dye, caramel, E150A into things? That's the biggest thing that adding colour to whiskey does. It robs you of the ability to appreciate the natural colour of the spirit. It's horrendous. Let's see. Let's nose this fresh Glencadam. Does it for me every time. Coffee, cold coffee in this one. A creaminess to things along with all that dried spice fruit. It's just so seductive and almost like a sultry thing, whereas this is bright and effervescent and outdoors, almost like a clean linen thing and everything, all of those outdoor floral things. And bang, this is like tea, dark fruit tea. Maybe not cold coffee, maybe a chocolate mocha, cappuccino vibe. Ginger. Cheers. Clydeside have gone from releasing something that was too young and too raw, too early. Their inaugural was too soon. This is beyond its years. This Napier is beyond its years. You can put this in a lineup, ask anybody to guess the age. Some people would get into the single-digit age statement, no doubt at all, but everyone would celebrate this at 6 years old. £54 is a reasonable price. It's a wee bit pricier than their standard entry-level stop cross, they call it. But this is a big step up. This is a big step up. I need to mention everything about this experience, though, with the Napier is American oak. It is spiced, but it's light, peppery and ginger. It's a clean sherry experience rather than a kind of dark and heavily spiced wood and wood spice thing that you would typically get from European oak, French oak, Spanish oak, Hungarian oak, that type of thing. This is clean American white oak sherry to me. But there's a poise to it and a balance. We don't know if it's first fill Oloroso, maybe second fill Oloroso. It doesn't matter. They've got the balance here. And it's not overtly off-putting sherry. This is the type of sherry cask that I suspect I could maybe even get our Jimmy Legg to enjoy. And Veruri's saying is, if you had to define a sherry bomb, what parameters would you put in? Same goes for bourbon bomb. Bourbon bomb is a new thing for me. A bourbon bomb would kind of lean towards bourbon, right? Virgin oak, heavy, heavy, heavy cask forward bourbon. So we'd be talking about the coconut, the caramels, all of that type of thing, everything dialed up to make it a bomb. Sherry bomb for me is the same thing, where sherry has taken over, it's taken it beyond the point of balance, and it's just gone all out to celebrate what sherry and sherry casks do to whiskey. We won't touch upon wet casks and that type of nonsense in here. All casks have to be fully disgorged, of course, but the fact remains that litres and litres of the previous incumbent, whatever the previous incumbent was, remains inside the wood. A sherry bomb usually talks, Mike, about something that is a bit like that, or has spent so long in the cask that it's literally sucked every morsel of sherry and influence out of the wood into the liquid. We've all got our own interpretations of a sherry bomb, but if you're going to call something a bomb on either side of the spectrum, you're going to the extreme ends of the spectrum. Excuse me, I would suggest, Mike. Lowlander is saying, the quality of Clydeside impresses me year after year. This is true, Lowlander, of Clydeside, but it's also true of all, I was going to say the lowland distilleries, but all new distilleries generally. They seem to be getting better year after year. Their craft of not just the maturity of the product and the dialing in what their product is going to be in terms of production side, but the ability to put it together in a careful, canny way. Maybe a bit more mature stock in the vatting as well, but almost all of these official releases, with very rare exception, tend to be blended casks, married casks, a vatting of casks. It's wonderful to be able to witness this continued evolution. George P is saying, I was lucky to be gifted a bottle of Napier for my birthday. Great dram. Always get a taste of strawberry Calpol. Love it. I know exactly the flavour you're talking about. Superb. It's a kids' medicine. It's basically paracetamol in a liquid form that you give to kids. It's not wonderful to taste, but I suppose it's nice enough for kids to be able to stomach it right. And I get exactly what you're talking about there, George. That's incredible. Wee bit of a Calpol note. Let's see how many times I lean on that Calpol note in the future. Wonderful. Mike is saying, agreed, the best sherry casks aren't bombing the whiskey. Can we invent the balanced bomb? I wonder if there can be such a thing as a bomb that's balanced. Yeah. Jimmy Legg is saying, I like Abuna. It's the exception. So I think what Jimmy's talking about there is the extreme, pure, raw element of a sherry cask. And I suspect it probably has to be quite a good quality or interesting, engaging sherry cask as well. Greg is saying, how would you compare the Clydeside to the Aaron Bodega sherry? Well, I was going to, the Bodega is definitely in the offing there. The Bodega at one point in time on the vPub was the one I was telling everybody for the price point it was. You can often pick up Aaron's Bodega sherry cask for less than £50. It's very American oak in its flavour profile as well, very clean sherry style. Higher ABV as well, fully natural as we would expect from Lochranza. And a great, great, great pick. In fact, it wouldn't take me much to just reach up beyond the lights there and be able to pluck a wee Bodega cask, a sherry Bodega cask from there. It was in the offing for tonight. Tyree Kai is in. Quite an intimidating character to have in the vPub, Tyree. It's nice to have you here. Ex-spirits are still entrained in casks, but they can be significantly less so than for non-spirit casks due to evaporation effects, especially with longer between cask fills. Every sentence that Tyree writes, so Tyree's a writer on Dramface. Fantastic guy, wonderful to talk to, wonderful knowledge. But if we talk about a whiskey being dense, every statement he makes, we have to kind of process. My brain processing power, my CPU is often just a little bit behind what Tyree's is. Ex-spirits are still entrained in casks, but they can be significantly less so than for non-spirit casks due to evaporation effects. Okay, so what we're talking about is what's left in the wood, I guess, based on ABV content. So spirits can be in there, but significantly less so because of the evaporation. So fermented liquids that have been in a cask beforehand, I suspect then are going to be much more part of the wood and the cask makeup, and therefore much more influential on the spirit fill when it eventually happens. I hope that I've been able to somehow unpack your statement there, buddy. So good to see you in the vPub. I hope things are well where you are. Let's move on a wee bit. Let's level up. Let's go up a level. We've got 5 levels to get through. We're on the middle section now. We're on our 3rd level. We're on fan favourites. When I spoke about how Glencairn was going to get quite a bit of airtime tonight, if we focus on ex-bourbon maturation and we move into the higher age statements, it's harder, bizarrely harder, to get a hold of product that's fully ex-bourbon matured. I can think of 2 Glencairns, 15 and 18. The 15-year-old is still utterly affordable and at a good price point. The 18-year-old is £127, £132, £135. Far too expensive for me, and it's heart-wrenching because it's a product that I loved. Really loved before it was discontinued. It's come back at a much higher price point. I suspect that Glencairn are just not, it's not focused for them to sell much of that product. It was way overpriced. That said, we're in 2024, and the amount of people that are bringing out 18-year-old product at 140, 150, 160, 170 pounds, it's crazy. It's just getting a wee bit out of hand. So I put it to everyone that's doing such a thing, it has to be an absolute banger. Bruichladdich 18 is a good yardstick for that. It's obviously a mix of cask maturation. It's all over the cask bandwidth, but they've managed to put together a really, really good quality whiskey for £150. Mine is almost finished. Am I going to replace it? No. If it was £120, yes. It's only £30 of a difference, Roy. Roy, you talk about quality over quantity all the time. It's only £30. Yeah, sorry. It's £30 too much in their pocket, and it's much better being in mine. Bruichladdich could have brought that out at 120, 125 for the long term. They could have done that. And how we would have shouted and shouted and shouted about a whiskey that's north of £100 and celebrated it. But they chose to do what they did. It is what it is. I've talked about how much I love that product. It's wonderful. Glencairn, ex-bourbon maturation, 18 years old, £130. Too expensive. But their 15-year-old is still very much a fan favourite. And typically 65, £60, even less, sometimes £55. Look how pale this is. Confidently, beautifully pale whiskey. 15 years old, typical Glencairn statements here. Big age statement on there, unchill filtered, no added colour, 46% ABV. Yes, 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 yes. Really, what this is saying, this label, this is malt whiskey, and this is how malt whiskey is exactly as it should be. The only thing that's changed from the cask to this bottle is the marrying and bringing it down to 46%. Nothing has been added, no colour. Nothing has been taken away through filtration. There's going to be no glug at all because it's very, very, very low fill. So what am I going to put this Glencairn's 15-year-old up against? There's a big omission, okay? There's a big thing missing. I can't talk about it. I've even removed it from my display over my shoulder here, because until the OSWAs are done, the best bargain that exists in Scotch whisky right now is part of the OSWAs, and I can't talk about it, but it should have been in this glass. That said, my mantra is there's millions of whisky. There's millions of whisky. We've always got more. I picked this up at a bargain price. This is an age-dated 48% ABV whisky that we believe to be non-chill filtered natural colour. It tells us on the back that it's non-chill filtered. I think it's natural colour too. It doesn't say on the label. That's a wee shame. However, the thing that's missing here is we don't know the distillery it's from. Do I care? Not really. It'd be nice to know, but I think I would much prefer that it's just good whiskey rather than knowing where it's from. This is an Atom Brands product. This has been on the shelf for a long time. It's got a hell of a long name on it. You can see by the holly on here, it was originally bought out for Christmas, but this is available all year round. Be careful, because I think there was lesser, lower ABV ones released as well. This is 48% ABV with an 8-year age statement on the label, and it's called Christmas Cake and Dark Chocolate and Medjool Dates and Cinnamon. So, apart from the dates, the medjool dates specifically, but the date thing I get. All of the typical tasting notes that we can easily draw from a typical sherry cask product. That's exactly what this is aimed at. This has been on the shelf for a long time, but it's still available now. £45 to £50, that order. That lovely natural glug that comes from a tall round bottling, right? Poured a wee bit more in there than I should have, but at least it gives you a chance to see the colour. It's a good colour, right? Camera's working well tonight. Must have been nice to it. Wee bit more spice than in Napier, ever so slightly cranked up a wee bit, and wood spice. Cedar wood, fresh sawn, warm woods, some pepper, some rich pepper. Plumminess and jamminess all intact, dried fruits intact. Just because you're looking for it, just because you're expecting it, just because the label suggests such a thing. I'm getting Christmas. Maybe I'd suggest Christmas dumpling, like booze-soaked Christmas pudding. Everything. The diced citrus rind, the cut, dried fruits, currants, raisins, the whole shooting match. Dark chocolate and cinnamon, according to the front label as well. Let's see. Cinnamon, definitely cinnamon. My right nostril tends to be a wee bit more, it tends to pick up more than my left, and I'm noticing that more and more over time. But you still go around both. Dark chocolate, sure, just by power of suggestion. Cheers. Single malt. Oh, and a good single malt. It's clean, but where the Napier has got that kind of really quite clean, smooth delivery, this has got a prickle and a bit of an intensity, a bit of detail. It's a little bit more alive. Similar to a decent Glenfarclas. Let's go with that. Not suggesting for a second that it is Glenfarclas, because I have no intelligence on what it is whatsoever. But if that's your vibe, that's your style. I would still suggest that we're in the realm of, let's have another wee sip. No, there's a chance that there might be a wee bit of European oak in the mix here. Refill sherry, vatting of American and European, don't know what it is. A decent malt, very decent malt whiskey. 48%, you could pour that for anyone. You could pour that for somebody who's just not used to the high alcohol strength. Very soft on delivery. Now, let's do an interesting thing. Let's go back off that big, rich Christmas cake, medjool dates, cinnamon, and dark chocolate event and go straight into the probably one of the purest 15-year-old malt whiskies that exists on any shelf anywhere as an official release. Glencadam's 15-year-old. So subtle, so delicate, it can be lost on so many folk. Sometimes me. Desiccated coconut. Light white powdered sugar, icing sugar, and white chocolate. Creaminess. Lovely, bright floral, outdoor. Where the 10-year-old has got the vibrance and the spikes and the prickle on the nose, the vitality. This is much more creamy and mellow. Creamy is a weird thing, so I'm not getting anything that's lactic here or anything such as that kind of cream. I'm speaking about fondant, macaroon, sweet confectionery creaminess. This is what you need to do. So when that sherry cask is seducing you, when it's kind of drawing you in with its richness and its depth and its kind of really quite moody nature, you go leap right off the back of that and take a sip of that bright, floral, clean. So if I'd imagined myself in my 30s, looking at myself in my 50s, doing what I'm doing, sitting here right now in front of you on camera and talking about these things, I'd have called for medical intervention. Nothing to do with alcohol, just to talk about the way that I'm expressing myself. It's amazing. It's amazing what whiskey can do. But the two things here in this glass, these two glasses in front, what we've got is barley and water. Sure, it's activated by yeast. Sure, it's been put in oak and matured, and it's different kinds of oak. But these are essentially liquids made with barley and water, and they are not the same drink. They are incredibly, incredibly different. And I suspect as we continue this theme throughout tonight, that's going to be a continued theme. I'm going to score these now. The Glenmorangie against the Glenelgin, I'm sorry, it's an easy win for the 12-year-old Glenmorangie, so 1 up for Bourbon Cask. If we move up to the more integrity forward thing where we put the Napier up against Glencadam's 10, that's a harder call. But just for the honesty, the consistency, and the product that is Glencadam's 10 over the years, it wins it by a nudge. But that's not to take anything away from that Napier and how good a product it is for a young distillery. 2-0 for Bourbon in favour of Bourbon. Let's come on to the 15-year-old. I've got this whiskey I've never tried before. It's a neck pour. Single malt 8-year-old whiskey. The only thing that we're missing in terms of knowledge here is the colouring status of it and which distillery it's from. God, it's good whiskey. That's good malt. Put it up against their Glencadam 15, one of my favourites. Lemon. A little sweet lemon coming out of things. Sherbet. Powdered lemons, confectionery. almost like a bonbon, a lemon bonbon. That's amazing. So sipping in contrast like that is fantastic. Still, the price of the Glencairn is a wee bit more expensive because it's much more mature. It's 15-year-old liquid from refill casks, mostly refill casks. Maybe some first fill in there, but mostly refill casks. Wonderful treat. Very little like that exists out there in whiskey. It's unique and it needs to be preserved. It's wonderful. Tonight, I have to surprisingly give it to the sherry cask, because this wee product here that's been on the shelf for moons, for months and months and months, £48. I think I picked it up on sale. It's £48 now. I think I didn't even pay that for it. Cracking value. If you can live with the fact that you don't know which distillery you're drinking from. Amazing to sip these two in contrast. Martin Logan, good to see you, Martin. He's saying, hey lads, lassies and aquavite, coming home from a beer and a cheese tasting I ran tonight. I'll watch everything on replay. Very interesting subject on paper. Happy drams. Don't write anything on paper, Martin. I try to, well, that's not true. I do write things on paper, but you're picking it up on digital paper. But I hear the spirit of what you're saying, buddy. Just coming back from a beer and cheese tasting in Paris sounds like a good wee life to have. You're an hour ahead of us, buddy. I hope you do pick it up in the replay, and it's nice to have been able to welcome you in here. Peter Lee's here. Just poured a Glenord from Alistair McPhail and a Glenturret 12 2020 from Aquavite. So the 2020 Glenturret would have been the maiden release. A Glenord is probably, I suspect, ex-bourbon, and you're having that wonderful contrast going backwards and forwards, Peter. Good to have you enjoying the spirit of the theme, and good to have you in, buddy. Ginger Genius is here. Good to see you, fella. Good to see you, John. He's saying Deanston 18 versus Speyburn 18. It's got to be Aquavite. Good call, John. You would think that I enjoyed our time together earlier this week or last week. I think it was last week now, right? I lose track of time. But it was nice to hang out with you and get a chance to shake your hand while we were in Glasgow. Hold your thought for a wee bit longer. Henrik Schmidt is here saying, Askig cask strength. He's talking about potentially Port Askig cask strength. Where is Speyburn 15-year-old? He's laughing. Missing from the shelf, is it? I do have Henrik. Speyburn 15 is pretty much always on my shelf, as you know, and that's why you're laughing. Hang on a wee bit longer. Look at John's comment, Ginger Genius. Have you mentioned Glendronach yet? Matt, I have not mentioned Glendronach yet. There is very little that draws me towards Glendronach these days, despite the quality of the liquid that they make. Chris Banks Wildlife is saying, do you find the old sherry whiskies also have a fust, like an old cupboard or cellar? Yes, Chris, I definitely do. When we have the privilege to taste something that is really old and really mature, you can get that. But I put it to you, Chris, that you can also get a very similar, if not often the same, fustiness from an old antique bottling. Is something that's been in glass for a long time too. Super interesting it can be. All right, let's go up to the next one. We're going to level up. We're going to want something that's a wee bit more premium. We're going to want something that we can indulge ourselves with and potentially indulge our guests with. And for this, I've put 18 years old plus. I'm very mindful of the cost of these things, so I've picked two 18-year-old whiskies. Ginger Genius, I hope you're watching. That for me bring the best value. Sorry to be so predictable, but it's just the way it is right now. Deanston's 18-year-old. At one point in time, this was all refill bourbon, and they finished it in first fill bourbon. They don't specify the same these days, but it's Deanston's 18-year-old fully ex-bourbon whiskey up against Inverhouse's Speyburn 18-year-old fully natural 18-year-old whiskey. Both of these products are roughly the same price. You can pick both of these up for typically somewhere in the order of £85 sterling. Look at the difference in colour. It's almost like it's a perfect example of bourbon versus sherry maturation. We can celebrate this because these whiskies are natural colour. We can pour them in a glass together and do the exact same thing we did with our Glencadam versus our mystery pour. Oh, have I got a cork problem here? Yes. Okay, we need to ease this out. Oh dear. Oh, it's coming. So you can see cork is splitting there. Can you see the split along that side? That's going to give way. So I need to just put that in lightly as pieces of it coming off as well. Sometimes it happens. It's not been on the shelf too long. I go through Deanston 18. It's easy when it's this price. Pour a wee drop in. This is probably our darkest bourbon whiskey that we've had so far tonight. See if our camera can pick that up. Nice colour, lovely rich colour. Let's pour it up against our Speyburn 18. Deanston do a good job, 46.3%, telling us it's non-chill filtered and things like that, but they tend not to put the colouring status on it. Whereas Inverhouse, with their Speyburn, give us the full gamut. They tell us on the label that it's non-chill filtered. They tell us that it's natural colour, 46% ABV, and a big 18-year age statement on it. Absolutely love it. Well done, Inverhouse. Well done, Speyburn. Look at the difference in colour between these two. We've gone from a 10-year-old Glencadam, 8 years more maturation, 8 years more cask influence in this Deanston, and it's so apparent. Sometimes Deanston 18 can sip a little simple, a little sweet caramel syrup, a little maple syrup. But the reason I love it so is that Deanston tends to be a wee bit of a shapeshifter, a wee bit of a subtle thing one minute, and then quite vocal the next. Sweet fruits, banana and syrup. Ripe fruits, like white plum lychee type. So we're looking at ripe, sweet, white fruits. Dessert syrup. The oak is present. The oak is definitely present, more present than any of the other ones, but you expect that because you're looking for it because it's 18 years old. Cheers. Oh, say what you like. Say what you like. There's no replacing time. Bang. If you ever find yourself sitting with a glass of Deanston 18 or something similar at that age and think, oh, it's a bit simple, it's a bit plain, switch it up, leave it, put a wee lid on the glass, go away, pick up something a bit more youthful, a bit more vibrant, whatever, and then come back to it. The rewards, the depth, the intensity, the concentration of flavour that comes from extra time in the cask is stupendous. That's two of the nicest sips I've had from this bottle. Wonderful that I can be here with you to do it. Fantastic. So a wee rinse. Let's jump into Inverary Whisky Shop. I missed that, buddy. You've gifted 5 Aquavitae memberships. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support, and thank you, and congratulations to the 5 people picking up a wee membership courtesy of Inverary Whisky Shop. Julian Rickman is celebrating being a member of Barflies for 29 months, saying visited Clydeside 3 times and better and better. Fantastic, Julian. Fantastic. I agree with you. The distillery bottlings they do are always worth a try. I picked a bourbon cask bottle from there that was spectacular. Okay, Speyburn 18. Prune this is kind of, wow, just, there's almost a kind of Armagnac-y, cognac-y decadence to the nose on this. Age, maturity, dunnage, mulch, autumnal. All the spices, all the fruits are much softer, much more together, much more compact, much more intense and integrated. It's almost like a brandy. There's a kind of really strange, delicious, unexpected vibe going on to this one tonight. Cheers. Body, weight, heft, unexpected. The nose is not going to suggest that it's going to arrive like it does. £85 is not cheap. £85 is not expensive for these whiskies. £85 is the price, potentially, arguably, that 18-year-old whiskey should be. So everyone that's charging us 95, 100, 110, 120, 130, they're doing so because they don't have much of it and they consider it precious. But I put it to you and I put it to them that they are overcharging, that they are going for short-term gain rather than long-term endurance. Deanston and Speyburn, with their 18-year-olds, are bringing it. Honestly presented, integrity, ethical, natural whiskies, delicious, objectively delicious. The sense of occasion and decadence and age that comes with the Speyburn is maybe edging the Deanston. Let's go back. I want to call it a tie. I want to, after the vPub tonight, maybe at the weekend, I think I'm going to play with blending these as well, see what we can do, because the maturity, the age is just so expressive. I'm not going to call a tie. We're at 2 for 1, 2 bourbon versus 1 sherry. So it's 2-1 to Bourbon Cask right now. I want to call it a tie, but I'm going to give it to the Speyburn. That arrival, that weight, that heft, that body that it brings along. I often say that Speyburn reminds me, and it has reminded me of a long time, of Mortlach. And that's quite a big statement to make. Mortlach is famously this big, beefy, savoury beast of Dufton, right? Whereas the Speyburn, the only thing that they have in common from the outside looking in is maybe worm tubs, right? But there's a good body, a good weight. Spend a bit of time. Maybe you could find some heft in there, some savoury, some meaty notes, that kind of thing. But it's just always reminiscent of that. Maybe a little bit more balanced than a Mortlach, a little bit lighter. Yeah, let's give it to the Speyburn. So we're at 2 for 2. The first one that won tonight was the Glenmorangie. Then we had the Glencairn 10. It took the plaudits. Then the sherry cask kicks in with the Atom brands. Far too long a name to remember. Christmas cake and dark chocolate and medjool dates and cinnamon. And now we'll give it, by a nudge, by a hair's breadth, to the sherry cask. So we go into the last 2 of the evening. Cask strength time. Sherry versus bourbon. Jimmy Legacy, and you fooled me with a Speyburn, if you recall. I guessed it was a Mortlach Aquavitae. Jimmy, that means a lot, because there was somebody else that was chatting about Speyburn very recently, and they said the very same thing. It has the ability to deliver a weight and a depth that is like that. Graham Fraser, Clouty Dumpling. Brilliant. Graham Fraser, I forget that you're not a Scot. I think you've been here so long that you have assimilated, right? And your Clouty Dumpling is a perfect pick for so many sherry casks. And you know, it's a steamed pudding made with all ingredients that you might put in a Christmas cake or a Christmas pudding, but it's made in a very, very different way. Doodle the Drama Arnie saying off to bed now, but not too bad since I sipped along with a wee nightcap of Glencairn 15 with you to finish off the evening. Yum, debating whether to be naughty and not brush my teeth now. I get it. Sometimes when you have the flavour on the palate, if you've got some of that Glencairn 15 to replace the flavour tomorrow, brush your teeth, big guy. But if you don't, you're not going to be judged by me and probably no one else in here. Now, there's a name. Danny, my man from Kearney, New Jersey, is in here tonight. Dan, so nice to see all the new folk that's in all the time. It's wonderful to welcome new folk. I love it. Anything that exists needs new blood, energy, dimension all the time. Every now and again, you look down and you see a name that's been here from before I even released a YouTube video. Dan, welcome to the vPub, buddy. I hope things are well in Kearney, New Jersey. Cheers. One of the most Scottish places in North America, I would suggest. Hoyt from the States is in as well, saying Glengoyne 21, maintaining its quality. It used to be a decent dram at a fair price, but that was about 7 years ago. We're both of the same mind, I think, Hoyt. Glengoyne 21 these days is just out of our price range, and it doesn't deliver at that price, unfortunately. Ben is saying, sorry if I missed it, but did you announce the book winner? No, Ben, but it's fantastic that you're here to remind me. Remember that we did the spinny wheel thing. Phil and Deepa won the T-shirt. Desi, I'm trying to remember, I've written it down. Desi, Robin and Andy Pierce, so Darth Kermit, Desi Vleeland and Andy Pierce won the book and cards. But I had one more copy of the book that I'd purchased, an extra additional copy. And I suggested that anybody that donated to the fundraiser after the vPub, after the event, would put their name into a hat. So Ben did that for me, and he picked out, maybe the spinny wheel picked it out, Ben, I'm not sure which it was. Maybe you just asked your virtual assistant to pick a random number for you. But Ben got in touch to say that the random pick for the last copy of the book is going to Craig Blair. So Craig, I've got a book. I don't have an address for you or anything, buddy. Let us know where you are. I hope you pick this up, or one of your buddies picks it up and tells you that you've won a copy of David Stuck's book, Pioneering Spirits, sorry. And I'll get it shipped out to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben, for reminding me. And Henrik Schmidt is saying, where is Buna 12 cask strength? Where is Arna 2024 cask strength? He's having a wee laugh with me. He is. He's putting some smiley and laughy emojis there. But this is the difficulty. Henrik, you get it. If you're going to put together a flight like this and put together one pick for each of 5 categories, and it has to be just one, and you have to keep the topic flowing, the discussion points and all of that, you have to leave things on the shelf. And it's so hard. So hard. So I chose to go completely new for the cask strength section. And I say cask strength in quotation marks here. When I say cask strength, I'm speaking about anything high ABV. So batch strength, barrel strength, barrel proof, 100 proof. However many ways you want to say higher ABV. Once that ABV creeps up, cask strength, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean high ABV. You can have 40% ABV whiskey that is generally cask strength, and a wonderful thing to seek if you can find it. However, when in the context of tonight, I'm talking about cask strength, you could really replace that statement with higher ABV. When we get into whiskey, when we chase our whiskey journey down, it doesn't matter what cask maturation we fall in love with. It doesn't matter which style of whiskey we fall in love with, whether it's bourbon, Irish, Japanese, Scotch, world whiskey, it doesn't matter. We have the ability to interpret so much more flavour through ABV. We realise how much of a flavour conduit higher ABV is. We realise how that higher ABV helps us drink less liquid, bizarrely back to front, right? That high ABV thing means that it's forcing you to slow down and sip less. It inevitably ends up that as whiskey botherers, geeks, nerds, aficionados, connoisseurs, whatever you want to self-refer as, you end up seeking out things that are higher strength. Cask strength, batch strength, 100 proof. I'm going to hold up 2 examples tonight from the exact same range. One bourbon cask, 57.1% ABV. One sherry cask, 57.1 ABV. Now, both of these are from the exact same 100 proof range, but there is differentiation beyond the cask maturation. One is a 12-year-old Ardmore from 2012. Refill, sorry, they specifically say superb, this is superb, second fill bourbon barrels after Isla, and in brackets, they put LA here. Can you see that middle strap there? So we're talking about ex-Laphroaig casks, which makes sense. Ardmore is Beam Suntory, a sister distillery of Laphroaig these days. So we know exactly what this is. Ex-bourbon cask, fantastic. Look at the colour. This is slightly different. Normally, the 100 proof series is all white label. The black label is different because this is the exceptional cask series, they're calling it. It's much more pretty than my camera's picking out tonight, but this Glenallachie, sorry, this Craigellachie, not Glenallachie, Craigellachie is a 2007 distillate, aged 16 years. So this is their higher level. So I'm not being fair comparing apples for apples here. But you can buy lots of 100 proof series. In fact, they all came out when this launched last year. We're less than a year into this range now. December time, I think, November, December, January, something like that last year. Earlier this year, these came out. All of the white label stuff is in the order of £45. The black label stuff tends to be in the order of £65. It's much more mature. It's more precious stock potentially. They're calling it exceptional cask. It tends to be just more mature spirit. I want to hold these 2 bottles up to you right now and ask everyone, as we're living in 2024, and this 57.1% ABV Ardmore and this 57.1% Craigellachie 16-year-old are selling at the prices that they're selling at, how is it possible that any other whiskey is being purchased at all? This signatory must be the pain in the arse of the entire whiskey industry right now. There is not a way, a metric, there is nothing you can do to measure these whiskies to put them in shade. They are literally outperforming every single whiskey that exists without comparison. How? How can that be? I feel sorry for all the other independent bottlers that exist today. They cannot get hold of the casks that Signatory has at the price that they need in order to put product out at this price. I feel far more sorry for all the official bottlings that's out there that aren't even aware that this thing is existing right now, that is literally challenging everything else that exists in the industry and asking serious questions on price, regardless of whether you bring a sherry cask or a bourbon cask or whatever else. 57.1% ABV, And it doesn't matter whether you pick up the Glenord, sorry, the Ben Nevis or the Ardmore. It doesn't matter what you pick up from the 100 proof series. Glentochers, Linkwood, Glenrothes, it's all covered. £45. Exceptional cask. This is the precious stuff. 15, 16, 17 years old. £65. The only thing that remains is for it to be good. The whiskies that I've had one or two that are good. Dramface scoring, 6 out of 10, that type of order. You know, this is good whiskey. The price I paid for this, I'm glad to have it. There's a couple more have been Dramface, 7 out of 10, very good indeed. One over there, it starts with G, ends in S, and it's got Lentocher in between, is a Dramface 8 out of 10. It's fabulous stuff, sherry cask as well. We'll get a glug out of this Ardmore. Pour a wee teeny bit of it. Oh, oop. Okay, I'm not peat blind tonight. Non-chill filtered, no added colour. 12-year age statement. Everything we need to know. Details about the cask. Let's open our Craigellachie 2007, aged 16 years. First fill Oloroso sherry butts. The only thing that's missing here, Mr. Signatory, is it full maturation or is it a finish? Regardless. Very rich, dark colour. Strong, dark tea in colour. Let's leave these two wee cask strength bargain whiskies on paper. Let them breathe for a second while I jump in the lounge. Richard Hall, fantastic. Bottle shuffled to the back and found a 20-year-old cask strength full bourbon maturation Strathyla. Perfect for tonight's fantastic show, Slancher. Richard, that sounds like a peach. I wish I was there sipping it with you, buddy. Ian Bruce is saying, have we seen any peat and sherry combo yet? No, but you're stealing my thunder here, big guy. It's kind of what I want. You know, we've got this thing, haven't we? We've got this, and it's true. Peat at the extreme end of the bandwidth, and sherry and peat at the extreme end of the bandwidth. I'll try that again. Peat and sherry at the extreme end of the bandwidth. Like I'm going to be able to edit this later. Works very, very well. It's very compelling. We're not going to be sitting there with our notepads trying to pick out every little nuance and subtlety. It's just a big, massive flavour punch, and we love it. But I'm getting to that, Ian, because I'm going to hopefully be able to mix our Glenallachie 16 and our Ardmore 12 and have a wee 12-year-old blended malt. And there's plenty punch and peat in that Ardmore. I can smell it right now to bring us that experience. Jimmy Legg is saying, that is the quote of the night. Why is anyone buying any other whiskey? Yeah, Jimmy, it's a real thing. When these things are available at this price, it is literally a nuclear detonation in the whiskey landscape, this 100 proof series. And they are relentless. It is continually, not all of them are available all the time, and they are selling out, but they are continually releasing more and more and more and more and more. I have never experienced a message to everyone in the whiskey sphere, community, industry, whatever you want to call it. I'll go sphere because I'm suggesting it's a message for us as the community, that we are being price gouged in every other avenue. And we know this to be the case, yet we blissfully, happily hop on to our next shiny new thing from our favorite brand. We are being robbed. We are the victims of arrogance, of greed, short-term mindedness. It is happening. And I know that it's happening in organizations where there are people that I am very friendly with, people that I admire, people that I dearly hope that they stay in whiskey for their careers, talented people. But they work in industries, in businesses and companies that play a game of greed. Not everyone is in the position that Signatory is in. Let's make no mistake, they are in a very unique position. If you started buying casks in bulk in the 1980s and 40 years later you're able to release a product like this, there's a good chance that there's not a lot of other companies out there going to do what you're able to do. But Signatory, make no mistake, are not losing money. They're probably quite light on overheads compared to others. They have 2 distilleries, Edredar 1 and Edredar 2. Their setup is very, very unique and very different. But this is a wake-up call for us as a community and for everyone in the industry. I feel sorry for retailers. How do they explain the price differences on a shelf when they're stocking the 100 proof series, because they absolutely have to, because they're retailers and their bread and butter is built on them selling product? But the people that's been supplying them up to now is making their ability to sell whiskey harder and harder at each year that passes. This is compelling. Danny Hebington is saying, I just picked up the Macallan one for 48 quid. It's nuts. Doesn't say Macallan on the label. It's got an M in brackets. People are going to love it. Hoyt is saying Signatory has been my go-to IB for many years. They almost always deliver at a price below the official releases. And Ben is saying all these Signatory 100 proof bottles are great value. Lucky enough to get a bottle split of every release so far. Ben, you would tell us if there's one to avoid, right? Precarious Davis saying, have you been chatting to Ralphie again? It's not a conspiracy, it's business. It's short-term business, unfortunately, Dave, isn't it? People forget that these businesses have to exist for the next generation. It's not technology we're in. It's not fashion. It's not clothes. This is whiskey. It's been around for hundreds of years, and we hope that it'll exist for hundreds of years to come. But the people that are in the play right now, making the decisions right now, don't even drink this stuff. Idiocy is rampant. Sorry if it's a wee bit of a rant. Kalila bottling, Ben is saying. Lowlander. Oh, so he's maybe giving us a warning with Kalila. I don't know. Lowlander is saying Glenmorangie 12 is already available at Sainsbury's for £29 with an Nectar card. It's going to be out there. It's better. It's a step up. It's a change, but it's a step up, Lowlander. Andy Pearce is saying Signatory not only undercut the other indies with their 100 proof range, they also undercut their own cask strength range and make their 46% range less of a value proposition. It's a very, very interesting thing that's going on. It might not last forever. A bit like one of the bottles that I could not feature tonight because of the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. These things are about the here and the now and at the moment. There is always, always, always millions of whiskey. We need to work together to identify where the good stuff is. Before we go into the quiz at the end, let's have a wee nose and a wee summary of these 2 cask strength releases. Now, cask strength is not the right way to talk about these whiskies. They are not cask strength. They are 100 proof. So they have been reduced to 57.1% ABV. Ardmore. Nosing in the PT one now. Lemons. Smoky PT lemons. Granny Smith green apple. Tart apple. Fresh apple. Lovely kind of salty smoke aspect to things. Quite clean though. Slightly ashen. You can't smoke pastry or bread. There isn't a smoked pastry or bread that I'm aware of, but behind the smoke, there's a kind of fermentation room, doughy, bready, estery type sense to things. nip into our Ardmore. Starting to smell like a outdoor or a bothy or something in here just by the peatiness of that one. This is our Glentocher, sorry. 16 years old. Gone down in age statement from the Speyburn, up in ABV. Worm tubs are the common thing here. Craigellachie and Speyburn both have worm tubs. This nose is very much like American oak Oloroso to me. Quite clean. Spices are quite subdued. A wee bit of wood spice, cedar, sawnwood, that type of thing, sure. Lots of oak. But all of it is kind of cracked toffee, toffee apple, clear toffee, that kind of thing. Sweet sherry. Ice cream syrup. Sweet notes. Not a lot of heady aromatic fruit, so we're not in the dates and the fudge and things. It's confectionery, it's quite sweet, it's chocolate. It would be nice for me to have poured a neck pour tonight and go, oh no, that's not good. But so often is the case. We tend not to buy duds these days, do we? That's just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's easy to be positive about something when a 16-year-old single malt whiskey at 57.1% ABV has only cost me £65. In fact, I got a weird discount on it that I wasn't even expecting. £63 I paid for this. Okay, the Ardmore. Fresh lemon, lovely fresh, fireside smoke, outdoor fire smoke. Ah, oh, superb. Much cleaner and lighter than I was expecting. Drier, a little bit acidic, complex. There's detail here that's much more than just smoke and citrus. So much more butteriness, a smoky butteriness, butter popcorn. Wow. I think this I was sipping it on the back of the sherry cask is helping this. Okay, a wee sip. We'll go backwards this time. £45. It's insanity. In the most wonderful way. To the Craigellachie now. Yeah, clean. Spices subdued. Have I mentioned that I quite like whiskey? Kind of strawberry laces, a wee bit of fennel or licorice type note come right in at the end, a kind of bitterness. Always helps. Okay. What's your thoughts now? Bourbon or sherry? Bourbon. Sherry. When I killed this poll, you weren't able to go back and change your mind. When I killed this poll, it was 54% in favour of bourbon. Let's see what happens now. There's less of yen now, just over 300 of yen. Earlier when this poll was running, we got up to 400 of yen. So it's going to change the number, but I suspect the sample is going to still be pretty valid. It's neck and neck right now, neck and neck right now. But jump into the chat if you're watching live on YouTube now to see if that's changed. The takeaway is that bourbon won by a tiniest of nudge. It's almost like it's American politics here, right? So close. But what's going to happen now is we're later in the evening. What have you been sipping at home? I'm going to have to call it. Because we've got a tie, haven't we? We've got two that went in favour of bourbon, then two that went in favour of sherry as the night went on. Here's how I'm going to decide. I'm going to decide based not on the specs on the label, not on the distilleries that they're from, and I'm not going to decide based on how much money I paid. I'm going to decide on I'm leaving and I get to take one bottle with me, and these are the two that's left. Which do I choose? Which do I pick? So it's purely then a drinking perspective. It's a lovely, weighty, oily, almost greasy, gloopy texture to that Craigellachie as well. Tobaccos. Sorry about the noises. I hope the mic isn't picking that up. You know what this Ardmore reminds me of a wee bit, with its outdoorsiness and its elegance and its lemon? A really good Colilla, or maybe even a Lagavulin. I've got a Lagavulin 12 cask strength up there. I wonder. Similar ABV. I wonder what it would be like to compare the two of them back to back. Bear in mind that this Ardmore is 12 years old. Similar ABV. Peated malt in an Islay cask for £45, and the Lagavulin is 155. Just shocking behaviour. I'm sipping an AD 1022 Madeira, says Henrik right now. Listen, that for a Christmas, not just gone, but the Christmas before, that was my winter dram. I loved every sip of that, Henrik, and I hope you're enjoying it too. Danny Hebbington is saying, don't shout insanity too loud now, Mr. Duff. Yes. I hear you, Danny. I may be the most insane here. If I'd, like I said earlier tonight, if I'd seen myself 20 years in advance, I'd have called the insane asylum, but I love it. I have to leave a school night. Great vPub Aquavitae. Good night, everyone, says Alistair McPhail. Thank you for joining us, buddy. I know it's a school night for me too as well, and I've managed my way through 10 drams. But I want everyone to see how much whiskey, like everybody's worried about consumption, right? And so we should be. We all need to be responsible. But everyone needs to know that the majority goes into a spittoon at the end of the night, unless, of course, we do a silly thing. We take our bourbon cask and we drop it in to our sherry cask and we give it a wee swirl. So we've now got an unpeated 16-year-old Craigellachie sherry cask, and we've dropped in a 12-year-old Ardmore bourbon cask. Same ABV. Just give it a wee swirl, let it settle for a minute. Alan Smith is saying, if you're like whiskey, why not do one of those newfangled YouTube channels? I remember the first time that was ever suggested to me, and I said, you'll never get me on camera. I'm glad that I am comfortable with changing my mind. Cheers, Alan. Treasure Genius John is saying, great whiskey, great whiskey is great whiskey, regardless of cask or strength. I think we're also, you guys are good at stealing you're reading my mind, right? That's kind of the point that I want to make. But regardless, the poll is still live. I'm going to kill it now, so get your votes in. We've vatted our two in the glass. We've got our Ardmore mixed with our Craigellachie. There is still a wee bit of smoke, but the overpowering nose, as I stick my neutered senses, my nose straight in the glass, is the Craigellachie, the sherry cask. Incredible. Listen, if you've in any way enjoyed the ramblings tonight, usually Sugar Kitty and so many of the other moderators remind everyone to leave a wee thumbs up and a like. And I don't really do it. I don't care too much. But I noticed that the difference between people not being reminded and being reminded is as much as 200 likes, which means a lot to YouTube. And people coming in to look to see, is this legitimate content or is this just nonsense? If you feel it's just nonsense, please do not leave a like. Consider even a down thumb. But if you're enjoying yourself and you think that there's value in it, leave a wee like. It's appreciated. Thank you. Let's have a wee sip of my blended malt whiskey. Hoped it would be better than that. I think I've amplified ABV somehow. There's lots of kind of heat. Maybe just needs a wee bit of time. Maybe they're not happy as they mix together in the glass there. What I was hoping is that I would get the kind of richness and the depth of the sherry cask and the brightness and the peat smoke and the savoury seasoning of the Ardmore, but that's not happened. It's kind of peppery hot in the glass right now. But not to discourage you or put you off from doing that, please do that at home, because sometimes it's spectacular and it works very, very well, even when you're just doing it in the glass and you're not kind of actually blending and giving it time to marry and things. Try it at home. However, I'm going to raise this glass to Signatory for giving us the ability to relax a wee bit when we can pick up quality spirits of this and this, these types of specifications, and be able to do these things and be relaxed about it. Whiskey should always be fun, but when it's costing us more than we ever want to pay, the fun is gradually eroded. Yeah, I've been talking about it for years. Too much complaining about price makes Aquavitae a dull boy, I know. But thank you, Signatory. Jimmy Legg is saying it's legitimate nonsense. I like that, Jimmy. Let me keep that one. Let me keep it. We've mixed our whiskies. I have to make a call. If I was leaving here and I had to grab one bottle and that was what I was going to sip, it's the Ardmore. It's the Ardmore. I would love every single sip of that Glenallachie. Sorry, I keep saying Glenallachie. Craigellachie. If I turn it so that it's facing me, Craigellachie. I would love every single glass of it. I really would. But the one that I would look forward to every glass of would be the Ardmore. The freshness, the brightness, the clarity, the purity. The fact that it's £45 is not an insignificant part in the decision. So what does that mean? That I'm predictable? I'm going to pick bourbon? Look at this poll though. Split. It's even closer. 54-46 it was in favour of bourbon when I killed the last poll. And those of you that are in tonight, it's become even closer. 51% in favour of bourbon. What we've done tonight, I hope, is prove that it's all wonderful. It's all a privilege. It's all a pleasure. It's okay to have a preference. It's okay to have a favourite. It's okay to have something that we dearly love. But I think we always need to keep our mind open. If we were sipping whiskey 60, 70 years ago, finding bourbon cask matured whiskey would have been almost impossible. This poll, this decision wouldn't even have been a possibility. But times changed and we adapted, Scotch whiskey adapted, and the palates out there adapted, and suddenly we were exposed to this marvellous thing, that this different style of oak, this spirit that we make in this country and many other countries around the planet, let's be honest, they could work together to make utter magic. And it didn't need to be virgin. It didn't need to be first fill. It could be second and third and fourth and beyond. We need to keep our minds open. I fully suspect if I had the same whiskies on the exact same night a week from now, I might fall in favour of sherry cask. But tonight, I'm taking the Ardmore, which means that 3-for-2 bourbon cask wins. It doesn't matter. It's wonderful. Signatory is my people's choice, says Whiskey and Wine Trails. And DVDW, I think that's David, is it? A wee splash of that signature 100 proof 12-year-old Glentalkers. You spotted the one I'm talking about. Goes great with Lagavulin 8 tonight. Absolutely barbaric. Fantastic. I wonder if I encouraged you to do that or if whether you'd be doing it anyway. Regardless, for you to have a great result. John Ferguson has bought me a dram. I made it to give you a sweet dram. Looks like we're having bourbon versus sherry standoff. Fantastic. John Ferguson, not only am I glad that you made it, I feel like it's maybe the first time I've welcomed you in. I'm going to say thank you very much for the dram. I'll give you a wee heart and a like back, which I often forget to do. And nice to welcome you in, buddy. We are having a wee bit of a standoff, but in the softest sense. And it's been a nice wee evening. Cheers, John. It's about to get tricky. The quiz at the end is imminent. 2 hours 15 in. Tom's Rams is saying, I'm sipping on Signature Vintage Kalila 100 proof, not really enjoying it, pal. Oh, Kalila 100 proof. I wonder if that's the one that Ben was warning about. David Brody's saying there's no right or wrong. I know. I agree with you, David. And as soon as you decide that there is a wrong, you're in a different environment, at a different time, in a different mood, and you realise, oops. Daisy Leland is in. Good to see you, Daisy. And David is saying, still not David, but Dan. Sorry, I know, but it looks like YouTube messed everything up with the handles when it moved, but it doesn't matter. Sorry, Dan. I will do my very, very best, my friend, to remember that you're Dan and not David. It does look like David, though, right? And there's a David Owen in with the same D in it. I'm making excuses now. Nice to have you, but you're forgiven as a fellow home blender. Listen. If we've got enough whiskey in the shelf and we're relaxed enough about it, and we're doing it in the glass, let's be honest, we're not giving up huge quantities, right? It's okay to play, have a wee bit of fun. Sugar Kitty's in. Thanks for looking after us as always, Sugar Kitty. The standoff just gives us a reason to drink double-fisted. That's right. That's right. Dan is saying, I know. You're still the best, Dan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, quiz at the end. Let me tell you what's happening next week and the week after and the week after. Next week is a long-awaited vPub for me. Serge Valentine will be joining me live on the vPub in a very, hopefully, conversational format just to celebrate Serge Valentine and the concept of digital whiskey and everything that involves. His remarkable standing, this respect that he has in whiskey. All of that stuff, I'm really looking forward to relaxing here next week with Serge. Been a long time coming, but it's happening. And then the week after that, I have a break. It's the school holidays here. So the family is taking a wee break. So in October, you'll miss a vPub on a Thursday night 2 weeks from now. But that's okay because we'll be back in time to have a final vPub in October before we roll into the online Scotch Whisky Awards celebration winner ceremony weekend. Looking forward to that. Been a wee bit of a toil this year, but it's still a super positive initiative. Ralphie and I will be stepping up on the 2nd of November to share with you what you have picked, what you have voted for, both in your awards, both in what you are going to decide is going to be the winners of the 9 categories, but also to relay what you have chosen in the People's Choice. So let me say to you, if you have not yet voted in the Online Scotch Whisky Awards because you feel like you haven't tried enough whiskies, because you feel, whatever your reason is, go in and vote. Because even if you skip every category or only vote in 1 or 2, it's worth it, your while. They are so close. More than anything, it's worth your while for the People's Choice. The People's Choice will generate a top 10 for each of those categories that we will share. That for me is so fascinating. OSWA.co.uk until the 20th. So you've got about 9 days left to vote. Go and vote now, and you can come back at any time before the poll closes and edit your responses. Register and vote is the most important thing. Graham Fraser is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 54 months. Thank you, Big Guy. Thank you for your support. Bourbon casks display the distillery character best. Yes, as in they do not veil, disguise, or amplify the distillery character. Let me ask you what you would pick. If somebody said to you, give me a typical Mortlach, you're going to choose a European oak matured Mortlach, aren't you? Distillery character, fantastic. That's great. So we understand the distillery character, and that's wonderful. What we actually want is how that distillery character is best displayed, not betrayed. Sometimes it's a sherry cask. Jimmy Legg is saying, sherry be damned. I'll buy you a dram of any refill bourbon you want, as long as we can drink it with these great people here. Cheers, everyone. What a wonderful sentiment, Jimmy Legg. What a wonderful sentiment. Danny Keenan is saying, driving back to Wales tonight, so missed the vPub, but we'll catch it all on the replay. Cheers, Roy. Danny, thank you so much. I wish you a safe drive down the road, and look forward to hearing how you pick things up on the replay. And David M. Shaw is saying, cheers from Perth, Western Australia, Roy. Your Loch Lomans have finally made it to Samanai and Terra, Australia, and we're looking forward to cracking them open soon. People are asking me what my favourite is between the 12 and the 14-year-old, Sam. I'll give you an exclusive. Given the fact that everybody's cracked them open by now, it's taken a long time for it to get to Western Australia. I love the 12-year-old. I love the 14-year-old. They are my favourite. And I can genuinely say that. And it's not a cop-out or a get-out, because when I take a wee half pour of the 12 and a wee half pour of the 14 and I mix them and leave them and come back, that's my favourite. The definition between those two and the original 10 from 2022 is wonderful to enjoy and behold. But there you go. That's my wee exclusive. Thank you very much, David, for your dram. Thank you, Jimmy Legg, you superstar. Thank you, Danny Keenan, you gentleman. And thank you, Graham Fraser, you legend. Cheers, all. Okay, we do have a quiz. Let's get our boots on, our quiz boots on. It's not going to be an easy quiz, but it's an achievable quiz, I hope, tonight. Remember, it's all multiple choice. You're only playing against yourself. Even the chimpanzee has a chance of getting a pass mark. Good luck, everyone. Question 1. Which of these Pernod Ricard Chivas Brothers distilleries has traditionally been available as part of Gordon MacPhail's distillery label series? A. Ardmore, B. Glentochers, or C. Strathyla. So for years and years and years, Gordon MacPhail has had agreements with distilleries to represent their official single malt way back in the day before they ever had official releases of their own. They didn't care about such a thing. They didn't think that anyone wanted to drink a single malt from their distillery. And so Gordon MacPhail retained a license for distilleries such as Scapa and Mortlach and many, many others. But I'm going to ask you, which of these Pernod Ricard Chivas Brothers distilleries has traditionally been available as part of the distillery label series through Gordon and MacPhail? Let's make this as big as possible so I can see all your answers in beautiful wide Technicolor through my aging eyes. Black Fen is in. Good to see Black Fen. C.A. Newman. That's probably a new name. C.A. Newman, it's great to have you in. He's answering B for Glentochers. The Water Life of Whiskey film, that's probably Greg that's participating tonight. Good to see you in, Greg. What's the time over there? I hope things are treating you well in the States, buddy. C, he's saying for Strathyla. Lots of you saying B. Jimmy Legg saying B and C. Ben Demon Hunter is in. Good to see you, Ben. B following you, C.A. Newman, says Ben. Matthew Renke is saying it's B and C. Graham Young is also saying B and C. And MCJ, another new name, MCJ, good to have you in, is saying B and C. But because you've spotted that there's a banana skin, nobody's getting a freebie tonight. You have to earn it tonight. There's not a freebie for all of these. Distillery labels exist for Ardmore. Distillery labels exist for Glentochers and Strathyla. But, of course, Pernod Ricard Chivas Brothers is only Glentochers and Strathyla. Ardmore is Beam Suntory. These days, that was a banana skin. Well avoided, everyone. Fantastic. Off to a great start into question 2. I'm showing you this Glentochers on the left and the Ardmore on the right. And one of the whiskies actually in the running tonight is, I'll just zoom in on this a wee bit. Here is the Strathyla. But this was just not anything like a sherry cask flavour experience. This was actually a very flat and dull experience of Strathyla. I have to say, this one, a bit of a shame, but there we go. So the one on the right here, the Ardmore, is Beam Suntory, and that was wrong, but Glentochers and Strathyla correct. Question 2, which distillery has gone from making around 12 million litres per annum at its peak to around 10% of that today? To give you a hint, this was once the biggest distillery in Scotland by capacity. A. Tomatin, B. Tomintoul, or C. Tullibardine? Which distillery once upon a time made 12 million litres per annum, but these days is making something in the order, making, not the capacity of, making around 10% of that? A. Tomatin, B. Tomintoul, or C. Tullibardine? So cool to have so many of you in right up to the end. Where's Royce here from Norway? Fantastic. Nicholas is here. Greg from Paris is still in here. Lassie, your Oatsman. Rob, too slow. Shamila Suze, that looks like a new name, Shamila. Good to have you in. Ian Williamson, I would also suspect that's a new name. Craig McGinn, I've welcomed you before, buddy. It's good to have you back. Whiskey Slayer is in again. Good to have you, Whiskey Slayer. Danny Hebington, Greg Stafford. Daisy's playing along. That was a previous question. No. If it was kind of similar. And Precarious Dave is saying bet it begins with T. All of you are suggesting it's A for Tomatin, and you're absolutely spot on. There was a time that Tomatin was making 12 million litres per year. These days, it's 250,000 litres per annum. Crazy that the focus is now much more on a single malt brand and much, much less in terms of bulk supply. But what we'll also say is that they are also representing Kuboken within that makeup too, I suspect. Question 3. What do all of these have in common? Glenmorangie's 13-year-old Barrel Select, Glenmurray's Twisted Vine, and, if you were listening earlier, Loch Lomond's Waypoint series, which is just released this week, their first release. What we're trying to determine, what ties those 3 releases together. Glenmorangie's 13-year-old Barrel Select, Glenmurray's Twisted Vine, and Loch Lomond's Waypoint series first release. Is it A, Dechar and Rechar barrels? Is that the theme? B, is it Limousin or Limousin French oak? Is that the theme? Or is it C, cognac casks? Could that be the theme? You guys are just on it. You're just on it, aren't you? It's easy peasy for you all. Ben Demon Hunter is saying C. I don't know. Fair play to you, Ben. I love the honesty. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Dechar, Rechar barrels for A, not so much. I'm not aware of any Glenmorangie or Glenmurray that's been released as such. Certainly not Loch Lomond. Limousin French Oak, the 14-year-old, which I believe is now for the off. It's been replaced by the Waypoint series, which is just out this week, and along with the 13-year-old Barrel Select from Glenmorangie and Glenmurray's Twisted Vine, they are finished in cognac casks. C is absolutely spot on. Well done, everybody. Despite Precarious Dave saying no idea, how can you have no idea? If you're reading this chat, you have every realization, Dave. Come on. It's okay for you to be part of the community and follow the chat. Let's see how you survive, though. Here's a wee image of the Glenmurray cognac cask from a couple of years ago. I think it was the 2021 release of their Barrel Select. I think they're up to about 5 releases in that series now. Palo Cortado, Calvados, all of that stuff. Here's the Waypoint series in the middle in a kind of interesting wee gatefold box that would be tossed straight in the recycling for me. Carpathian on the right-hand side is another wee example that I was given Bogdan Avram, I think it was it? Left me with a cognac cask matured Carpathian as well. Of course, the other one we mentioned famously was Glenmurray's Twisted Vine. Question 4. Which of these brands has a release which has enjoyed a bump in age statement in recent years? By a bump, I mean a positive increase in age statement in recent years. Which of these brands has enjoyed that? A. Turmore, which enjoyed a jump from 16 to 18 years old. B. Glenmorangie, which enjoyed a jump from 12 years to 14 years old. Or C. Colilla, which enjoyed a jump from 12 to 15 years old in recent years. Whiskey with Molly's saying no Glenmurray there. No, Ben, that's right. I was just putting up examples of some cognac cask whiskies. Yeah, the Twisted Vine didn't. I should have dropped an image into that, buddy. Jimmy Legg is saying, I'm guessing Michael Henry didn't design that packaging for the Loch Lomond he's talking about. Yeah, Michael's a whiskey designer maker, right? He's not into the kind of the fluffiness of the packaging, I imagine. Danny Evington is saying that box could have knocked a tenner off the price, but it's lovely whiskey all the same. So aye, Danny, it's you that's sipping the Waypoint right now. I wonder if it is a tenner's worth. Be interesting how much cheaper we could be enjoying this stuff if we didn't go for the big fancy packaging. But for a lot of folk out there, it's actually quite an enjoyable thing. So I'm not going to pour any more drams tonight. I've poured all that I can have. So the question remains, should I just be sipping these as single malts or should I be mixing them up and having fun? I'll just sip them as individuals. Petehead is saying, just curious, is there a theme tonight? Thank you, Frank. Okay. Knowledgeable whiskey folk, the lot of you. We mentioned it earlier on. Glenmorangie, the Quinta Ruban, which is port cask finish. I think it's pretty sure it's finish. It's not maturation in port casks. 12 to 14-year-old. About 5 years ago, before the bump in what we've seen just recently with Glenmorangie's, the original going from 10 to 12 years old. Like I say, they've got previous. The Quinta Ruban went from 12 years to 14-year-old. Back in 2019. So if you answered B, which most of you did, you're kicking out of the park. Let's go into the distillery at the end. The distillery picture. Wee picture here of the Glenmorangie 14-year-old. Most of you are probably going to know what you're looking at, and it's amazing how many mentions of the distillery in this image. I had to Photoshop out the distillery name about 6 times. It was written in this image. This was sent to me by WhatsApp, and I would love to remember who sent me this image to credit you, but I could not find it. I searched WhatsApp. I did everything to figure out where I got this image from. So please let me know if it's your image in the comments. What distillery we're looking at is the first thing, but there's a wee bit of an asshat here, so you need to know the answer to 2 things. Are we looking at A, a distillery that was founded in the 18th century? Are we looking at B, a distillery that was closed for over 40 years in the 20th century? Or C, are we looking at a distillery that was renamed in the 21st century? A, founded in the 18th century. B, closed for over 40 years in the 20th century. Or C, renamed in the 21st century. Tom, Whiskey and Wine Trails, is saying, lovely warehouse tasting there. Tom, I think it's you that sent me this image. I think it's you that sent me this picture, wasn't it? PFBOG. That looks like, I know for sure that's a new name. Suggesting it was closed for over 40 years in the 20th century and going for B. Good to have you in. It's good to welcome you. Matt Fulick is here too. Peter Lee is saying A. Mike Molasses, Lachlan, Big Ed. Most people going for A, founded in the 18th century. Matthew Rinke is saying A, but I wonder if it's A and C. Like the way you think, Matthew. I like the way you think. David Brody, although it has been renamed. I like the way you think, David. Good stuff. Okay, let's put you out your misery. We are looking at Tobermory. Of course, we're looking at Tobermory. Founded in 1798, closed in 1930 and not reopened until 1972. Renamed from Tobermory to Lechic twice in the 20th century, not the 21st. So if you answered A or B, you're absolutely correct. The banana skin here was the 21st century. 20th century is when Tobermory was named and renamed again. Tobermory Distillery, a wee bonus, an ass hat at the midway point. Sorry about that, but I gave you a 66+% chance of getting it right. So if you answered A or B, you're in good shape. Let's roll into the tougher questions. Which of these distilleries has an orchard on site with plans to distill an apple brandy in future? I can also suggest they've already released a cider, an apple cider, in collaboration with another brand, but I'm speaking about their plans to distill an apple brandy in future. Is it A, Kingsbarns in Fife, B, Lag on the Isle of Arran, or C, Lochlee in the lowlands of Ayrshire? A, Kingsbarns, B, Lag, or C, Lochlee. Which of these distilleries has an orchard on site with plans to distill an apple brandy in future? So rather than a fermented spirit, a cider, an apple cider, they're talking about taking it one stage further and distilling it into a brandy. Oh, such knowledgeable folk. Fantastic to see. It's hard to catch you guys out. It really is these days. Question 6. It is clearly Lag on the island of Arran. I've got a wee picture here to show you the orchards here. Some really nice pictures around on the web right now, but I didn't have the ability to share all of them. What you see, that the apples, actually, these trees are much more mature now since this picture was taken. They're producing so many apples that they're confident that this is going to be a theme of the distillery going forward. So we can have some alternatives from the Isle of Arran in the future. Looking forward to it. So if you answered Lag, 6 out of 6 for so many of you, I see. Fantastic. Question 7. What are Diageo calling their recently announced 2024 special releases? Now, I know, why am I drawing your attention to Diageo and the special releases? And look, it's dull upon dull for me. It really is. I was hoping to see a correction, and we have. Even immediately after the point of release, we're seeing £5 and £10 taken off some of these releases already. It's a shame that they weren't able to just be honest about it up front. We're going to see these discounted again. Don't rush for these things. I'm just asking you what they're calling them this year. A, Diageo 2024 special releases are called Spirited Exchange. B, they're called Elusive Expressions. Or C, they are called Legends Untold. What are Diageo calling the 2024 special releases? It is shocking to me when you look at the correlation between the marketing effort and the price that we have to pay. Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying they should call them too expensive by a factor of 50% at least on most of them. I have to make a confession and say that I've already bought one of them just out of pure curiosity and naivety and optimism and hopefulness and clutching at straws. I've bought one of them. It's not delivered yet, but it's on its way. Greg's Whiskey Guide in Paris. Greg is saying A, but I don't like the name. Jimmy Legacy, and I would have called them Fool Me twice. Absolutely spot on. I can tell you that Legends Untold, I believe, was 2021. Elusive Expressions was 2022. Spirited Exchange was 2023. And 2024. So the prices that we're paying is just to rehash the story from last year. Not that it makes any difference. I haven't tried any of them yet. I'll reserve judgment until I've tried a couple of them. But it was the exact same as 2023. So Did you splash out and grab the Benrinnes drinks whiskey? Unfortunately, buddy, I did not. I went for the cheapest one. I went for the 8-year-old Talisker in the hope that it could come some way close to the absolutely resplendent Talisker that was the 2018 release. I think it was the 8-year-old from the recharred bourbon barrels, going from memory. Anyway, question 8. With which distillery might you associate a Teddy, a Montefiore sherry finish as part of the core range, and a collaboration with HBO to release The Night's Watch? Which distillery have all of those things? A Teddy, a Montefiore finish, core range, and a collaboration with HBO called The Night's Watch. Is it A, Mortlach, B, Talisker, or C, Bourbon? For those of you excited to see which Diageo distillery it was going to be with the HBO collaboration there, they're all Diageo distilleries. It's question 8 now. It's getting trickier now. 115-year-old for an 18-year-old. For an 8-year-old oofed. I picked up the Talisker 8 for £90. £89 or something like that. I got it for. It's just released. Very similar to last year's vibe. What's Night Watch, says Ben Demon Hunter. It's one of the Game of Thrones releases, buddy. So I'm going back a few years now, pre-pandemic, of course. Mortlach has some connection with death. Night Watch against Death Walkers. Precarious Dave is throwing darts here. Tom Elmer in Alaska. Well, work got in the way, so I'll have to get back for the rest of the quizzes. Cheers, Roy. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for participating tonight, buddy, and I hope life in Alaska is treating you well. Fantastic to see you here, big guy. Really is. Okay, I can tell everyone that Teddy is a direct relation to the original distillery manager, the grandfather, whose son was Teddy, and then Teddy's son became Derek, I think. But they've started to release expressions in honour of this family. A Montefiore sherry cask finish was the distiller's edition, and the Night's Watch was a release from Bourbon. Bourbon is what I was after. The majority of you got that right, but I notice it seems to have taken one or two of you out of the running for a 10 out of 10 tonight. Regardless, we move on to the second from last question. According to the Malt Whisky Yearbook, the current edition 2024, no, sorry, I say the current edition. The new 2025 is out, but I do not yet have a copy. I'm desperate for it to arrive. But the 2024 edition of the Malt Whisky Yearbook, according to it, which of these countries only has a single malt distillery? I just realised how I've worded that. I should have written, which of these countries only has one malt distillery, despite being a popular whiskey market? Single's not the appropriate word there. Which of these countries only has one malt distillery? A, Spain. B, Portugal. C, Brazil. Fairly popular whiskey market. Connoisseurs and communities in place. And yet, according to the Malt Whisky Yearbook, they only have one distillery producing malt whisky. So many of you on 8 out of 8. So many of you. Jimmy Leg is asking, does Portugal have one? Do you want me to answer that? I would either be giving you the answer or leaving you with a 50-50 in either scenario. Lachlan McKenzie is saying C. Oh, wow. My goodness. Come on, guys. Hold on. Is everyone following the crowd? I'm looking up. Still time to change your mind. Just trying to remember the names of the alternate distilleries. Okay, I've got both here. Graham Fraser is saying B. Peter Buck saying B. Gino Komodo saying B. Fantastic. Peter Lay saying B. Jimmy Jazz, Stephen Marsh, Whiskey with Wally Ben, all saying B. Fantastic. Come on, get your answers in. Tom Elmer in Alaska, before he dips out, is saying B. Come on, Tom. Craig McGinn, B. Daisy Vleeland is saying, oh, B. Danny Hebbington, B. Okay, B, says Ben. Ian Bruce, B, 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 B. Spain has Distilleries Molino del Arco and also Distilleries Liber. Brazil has the Union Distillery and Lamas Distilleria. Portugal only has one distillery. According to the Malt Whisky Yearbook, I suspect that is so difficult for Ingvar and any team that he's got supporting him to keep up that might have changed by now. But it looks like, despite quite a huge whisky exciter, appreciator community in Portugal, they only have one distillery listed. We roll into the ass hat at the end. So many of you are managing to hold on to a very high score tonight, a 7 out of 9, an 8 out of 9, or even a 9 out of 9. Ben Demon Hunter, Danny Hebbington, Desi Vleeland, with some help on that last one. That's okay, Daisy. Graham Fraser on a 9. Sharmila Seuss, I've mentioned you already, but fantastic. On a 9 out of 9, it's an amazing score. And Matthew is celebrating being okay, that helped me get to a 9 out of 9, says Matthew. A dodgy 9 out of 9 for Bruce. And Big Ed is in. Good to see Big Ed on a 9 out of 9. Graham Young, good to see you, Graham, on a 9 out of 9. Whiskey Mentors, Tom on a 9 out of 9 with an asterisk next to it. Like, listen, it's okay. David Owen is here. So Dan, there is a David Owen, and you both have the exact same wee icon, but clearly different names. My mistake. 9 out of 9 with a bit of luck, along with Matt Games, 9 out of 9 Gs. Okay, let's go to the last one. The ass hat at the end. How many Scotch malt whisky distilleries, in operation today, of course, begin with the letter T? This has been asked before, but in a slightly different way. How many begin with the letter T? Is it the same as the number of A, official available flora and fauna releases? Is it B, the same as the number of the age statement on the oldest King Barnes released to date? Or is it the same as C, the years of operation for Wolfburn Distillery in the Northern Highlands? How many distilleries are there beginning with the letter T? It's the ass hat, so you need to know the answer to at least 2 things in order to get this one right. The number of distilleries beginning with the letter T is the same as the number of official, currently available flora and fauna releases. It's the same as the number of years on the oldest age-stated Kings Barnes to date, or C, the number of years in operation for Wolfburn Distillery. Whiskey with Molly Ben is celebrating. He's saying he's going early. He's swaggering. He's swaggering on this one. Rob Too Slow is saying, what the Sean Holtgrave. Sean, good to have you in. Thank you for being a barfly. Wonderful to see such a strong score as well, buddy. With the help of the chat, that's the way the quiz at the end goes. It's all about community, big guy. Take it when you can get it. Stephen Marsh on a 9 out of 9. Peter Lee on a 9 out of 9 as well. Well done, Peter. Well done, Stephen. Ben is saying, I haven't had a 9 out of 9 in several months. Paul Murray, it looks like a new name, Paul. Good to have you in. He's saying, oh no. And Stephen Wilson is going for C, years of operation for Wolfburn. Nicholas is saying B, going to the Kings Barnes one. And Whiskey Slayer is saying C, along with Chris Pollack. PFBOG is saying B, along with Nicholas. And I saw another B there as well, just as it jumped. All over the place, as the ass hat should be. It should be difficult. Peter Lee is saying, I'm going with Jimmy Leg on C. Tullabarden is saying Jimmy Leg. How old is Wolfie, says Precarious Dave. Okay, Dave, I can tell you that 10-year-old plus, says Greg's Whiskey Guide. The number of distilleries beginning with T are as follows, and I shall read them out. Talisker, Tamdu, Tamnavulin, Chininic, Tobermory, Tomatin, Tomintoul, Torravik, Tormore, Tulvadi, and Tullibardine. We have 11 distilleries, Scotch malt whisky distilleries in operation beginning with T. The number of years of operation for Wolfburn Distillery and official available flora and fauna releases is 11. Kingsbarns have just released an 8-year-old. That isn't quite enough to match the T distilleries. So I hope that for those of you that answered B, you forgive me, because there was a 66% chance, and that rarely happens, of getting the ass hat at the end correct. I was looking for flora and fauna, which is 11. I was looking for the years of operation since 2013 for Wolfburn. How many of you managed a 10 out of 10 tonight? Celebrations kicking off in the chat. Wonderful to see. Whiskey with Molly. Fantastic. 10 out of 10 emoji all over the place. Wonderful stuff. Jimmy Legg is saying, till what? To Lavadi? Yeah, it's a new distillery, Jimmy. It's hard to keep up, isn't it? Tony Nelson, good to see you. Tony on a 9, so close. Graham Fraser celebrating 2 weeks in a row on a 10. Peter Box also celebrating a 10. Whiskey with Molly Ben celebrating for the 3rd time. You deserve it, buddy. P-Dram in for a long time in a while, celebrating a 10. Daisy's on a 10. Fantastic, Daisy. Gino, come on, a 10. Fantastic, Gino. Thanking his pal Graham Fraser. Tom Whiskey and Wine Trail is saying 10 with the asterisk. That's okay, Tom. Take your 10. Lachlan McKenzie, 10 out of 10. Dodgy as though. There's no such thing as a dodgy thing that we've managed to gather as part of being together in the community. Stephen Marsh is on 10. Greg's Whiskey Guide, haha, my second 10 out of 10. Cool. Enjoy it, Greg. Well done to you, fella. Ian Bruce is saying yes. The top over the head. Not sure the officer got the top over the head. Not sure the officer impressed. He's at work scoring a 10 out of 10 and celebrating. Sharmila Suze is dancing. Terrific stuff. Danny Hebbington. Whiskey Games, Matt Bishop. David Owen, Bruce Bernard, Greg's. It looks like so many of you have scored a wee 10 out of 10 tonight, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff to see. So it doesn't really matter what we get together to celebrate, does it? It doesn't matter whether it's nonsense in the quiz or really serious stuff in the quiz. It doesn't matter whether it's nonsense in the glass or really serious stuff in the glass. And it doesn't matter if it's bourbon matured whiskey that's in the glass or sherry matured whiskey that's in the glass. Because it's this thing, it's all of it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to dissect and dive into and distinguish and compare and contrast and all of these things. But it's like everything else. We need to stay open. We need to stay mindful. We need to stay adaptable. But more than anything, we need to stay critical of thought. How can these things be? Let me share with you what the cost of the whiskies I share with you tonight, because I suspect if I asked you what do you think cost me the most amount of money this evening, you would immediately say it's the sherry cask. Sherry casks are more expensive, Roy, especially when you hold up your sherry cask for the cask strength as a 16-year-old Craig Ellachie and your cask strength bourbon cask pick is a 12-year-old Ardmore. Sherry cask is going to be more expensive. I can tell you, if I list the prices that you pay retail today, in the UK, of course, is the caveat for the bourbon cask, £272 for the collection I shared with you tonight. The sherry cask I shared with you, £260. It's cheaper. Listen, bourbon won out for me tonight, but by literally a single digit of percentage points. I suspect that sherry cask is more expensive because of the demand, more expensive because potentially it's perceived that there is less of it, and more expensive, let's be honest, because it's bloody darker. It's darker. Whiskey is an emotive thing, and we are emotive beings. We're emotional people. We get fooled by this stuff. And when we're fooled, the wool gets pulled over our eyes. The whiskey that I couldn't include tonight would have made the sherry lineup tonight even cheaper. There is millions of whiskey out there. Try and be as open as you possibly can. I'll hold up this wee nip of the Napier. I have to say, I have to thank some drams that's coming right at the end. PFBOG, PF Bog, thank you for this nice evening. Greetings from Bavaria in Germany. Dankeschön. It's so nice to have welcomed you in, my friend. Maybe I'll get to know what your name is so that I can avoid just spelling out some letters in the future. And my pal Danny Ebbington from up the road is saying, cheers from being here, buddy, in Slantia. Thank you to my friend in Bavaria, and thank you to my friend up the road, Danny. Thank you for your generosity. Love to you both. I'll mark a wee like there. I'll raise this glass to you all. Look forward to hanging out with you with Serge Valentine next week. Remember that the week after that is a holiday before the final October vPub before we roll into the OSWAs in early November. I can't wait to hang out with you next week and see what Serge has got to say. Looking forward to it. I'll remind you all until then that you're very dearly loved. Slancheva. Cheers.